Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney in London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. I'm wearing a Quest 3, and David has a 3S on, and each of us appears as last-generation Meta avatars. We're using hand tracking and built-in microphones here in this recording studio made by David in Unity. Hello to everyone in our comments. Everyone, welcome to 2025, and thank you to our patrons. That's Richard Meller, Mike Manzano, Holonet Podums, that's the developer of Smash Drums, and XR Developer News. Sincerely, thank you to our patrons for supporting us. David, what do we have today?
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year indeed, and welcome to 2025. We have 5 topics we're going to discuss today. We will first discuss that Questmas arrived again. The number 1 free iPhone app on Christmas Day 2024 was Meta Horizon, the app needed to set up Quest headsets. We will then discuss the bad news on Questmas, where Meta issued a firmware update that essentially bricked some headsets that hadn't been updated in a while. And then they've now, in the past week, started to issue replacements, and they've got working firmware updates for some other units. And Ian was on top of that story over the holidays, and he'll walk you through that. We will then discuss the fact that Meta is now offering an education discount. It will give 10% off their Quest headsets and smart glasses to students and educators in the US. It does appear to be US only for now. We will then discuss the Financial Times report claiming that the next generation of Ray-Ban Meta glasses will arrive later this year, 2025, with a small heads-up display, which contradicts previous reporting that suggested that Meta would launch HUD glasses this year, but that they wouldn't be Ray-Ban branded. So we'll discuss what might have happened there in the time since that old report. Finally, we will discuss Pimax Dream Air, the compact, lightweight, tethered PC VR headset that Pimax just announced and opened pre-orders for, which it claims has 4K per eye micro OLED panels, eye tracking, inside-out slam tracking, included touch-like controllers, and a unique self-tightening head strap. So we'll discuss that at the end.
It's really cool to see a lot of our regular viewers. I saw someone watching from Buffalo, New York. Love hearing where everyone is watching from, especially if you're in VR. We love to hear what apps you're roaming through as you've got our video or audio up and running. Hello to our audio listeners out there who are listening to us after the fact on all podcast platforms. If you're a new user in getting into VR for the first time this season, if you just got your Quest and got it up and running, welcome. Thank you to our show. Welcome to what it's like to produce a show for straight from virtual reality. This is new, weird. We're using the same avatars you might use on a Quest. Yes, the older ones, but it's the same technology. And looks like we've got Rochester, a couple people in the UK, as well as Southern Utah. Really, really cool to see you all tuning in from the far reaches of the world. David, I am operating without Wi-Fi today. My Wi-Fi is turned off on this Quest headset because I did not want to start 2025 hearing from you blaming my internet connection for a bad connection across the Atlantic. Hello to New Jersey out there, and hello to Gigo, the creator of Virtual Desktop. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this link out for others. Especially if you've got a new VR user in your, social circle. Let them know that they can get their questions answered in the comments over here or with our show. David, what's our first subject? You want to get into it here?
Yeah, we'll get into it. But first of all, I want to say that is hardcore having your Quest wired to Ethernet, and you already sound smoother. I'm sure we'll have no random drop today. So there you go, folks. That's how much Ian is dedicated to this show. He has his headset hardwired to Ethernet. So yeah, our first topic. Questmas arrived on Christmas Day 2024. The number 1 free iPhone app was Meta Horizon, which you require to set up a Quest headset. So this suggests to us that a lot of people got Quest 3 and Quest 3S under the tree or in their stockings on Christmas Day. This has happened in the past, of course. It did happen in Christmas 2021 and Christmas 2023. Interestingly, as far as we could see on the day, it didn't appear to happen in Christmas 2022, which happened just after Quest 2's price hike. So it's interesting to see that in 2023, the newness of Quest 3 got it there. And now it looks like the lower price point of Quest 3S, bringing those same capabilities down to $300 starting point, and with some really great deals at Black Friday that we covered, has brought this to more people. So the other interesting data point we have here is from Amazon US. Now, this is only one retailer, of course, but if you look here, it says 100,000 plus bought in the past month. And we looked at the listings for PlayStation 5, both SKUs, the disc one and the disc free one, and Xbox Series X and S. And this is outselling all of them. And, it's outselling both PlayStation models combined and both Xbox models combined. But again, with the major caveat that this is one retailer in one country. But I mean, if you put these things both together here, the iPhone app being up top, it's beyond Alexa. More people got, based on this data, more people got, a Quest headset than an Alexa for Christmas. And yeah, it does look like we've had another Questmas, another huge surge of users. And I've seen some developers publicly share on social media their hockey stick tick of new users on Christmas Day, and others have privately communicated to us that they have seen that huge wave of Christmas Day users that they were hoping for.
So I was waiting for it, and sure enough, we did get the data point here in our comments. So thank you, Guy, for tuning in, regular viewers. So it's the creator of Virtual Desktop, has become a regular viewer. I think we've hooked him into the show a little bit. So thank you, and we also need to apologize for reading out Guy's comments all the time. I think he gets frustrated at that a little bit because we tend to take note of his comments when he makes them on our show. But he was suggesting as his own data point in counterpoint to this, saying that everyone he's talking to when he speaks to other devs is seeing major drops in sales for their holiday season from 50 to 70%. Now, this is perhaps part of what we've been hearing all year long, visibility issues, Meta choosing to promote worlds on Horizon in front of store content like Virtual Desktop. I encountered this myself over the holiday season, just going inside the headset, even looking through my apps, trying to find things to reinstall on various headsets I was trying to get up and running. And in the menu systems, I would keep seeing these worlds promoted up above and before paid apps. So that is very scary for a lot of devs out there who are dependent on paid purchases. If Meta is sort of embracing the idea that their core audience are children who don't have credit cards at the ready to pay for worlds, and they need easy to access, free to play spaces like McDonald's and the Office. That's I think what Meta has signaled its core market, or they think their core market is over this last year, and that's where we see the world's recommended. Well, people like you, Godin, and all the paid game developers out there have to contend with the fact that this is another Questmas, but the promotion might not be there at the same level it has been in previous years.
Yeah, I think it's a complicated issue here, where some developers may be saying that, and others are telling me that they're seeing increases in sales. So it's going to really depend on the content. And I don't think it's as easy as saying that, with Quest 3S, you're seeing more children. Certainly you are, but you're also going to see people who are more price sensitive, right? Last Christmas was Quest 3's Christmas, the $500 starting headset. And generally, people who are buying a more expensive version of something are more likely to spend, right? Globally, iPhone is not the majority mobile platform. It's Android is the vast majority of units. But when it comes to spend, iPhone users spend far more on apps than Android users, even in aggregate overall, right? So developers of mobile apps get more revenue from that minority of iPhone users. And you're likely to see a similar thing between the more expensive Quest 3 and then Quest 3S, where a lot of people are price sensitive. They're coming in here, to them, this is expensive. And to a lot of people, the $300 purchase is still a very expensive purchase. And so the last thing they want to do is start spending on games. In Virtual Desktop's case, as we kind of pointed out before, the irony is that the comment right after may explain some of that dynamic, where, laughing anarchist says, bought myself a Quest 3 for Christmas just to try out wireless. The Steam Link app has surprised me at how good it is. So I personally use Virtual Desktop most of the time, but I often use Steam Link to catch up on how good it is, how well Valve's updates are keeping up. And I would, if I was doing my own personal VR awards, I would give Steam Link the most improved for 2024 because it started that year as a buggy mess and it ended that year as an incredible free way to wirelessly connect to your PC games. So I would expect you would see some declines in virtual desktop sales amongst Valve providing a free and now today excellent alternative.
Yeah, and the person at the Laughing Anarchist also asked, adding many Quest buyers got that free Quest Plus subscription as well, and
That's
that
a really good point.
probably ate at a lot of sales, pure sales, from the bottom line that a lot of people were looking for. Just want to encourage people to comment and ask their basic VR questions if they have any out there. If you're quiet in the audience and you've been out there lurking for a long time and don't pipe up, we have a lot of regular viewers that we always love to chat with in our comments, so thank you. But they're also very helpful at answering those new questions just like we are, and this is a perfect time to ask some of those basic questions about the VR market that we can cover on this show. What else do we want to cover here, David?
Yeah, I really want to linger on that Quest Plus point because I don't think we bring it up enough. Quest Plus started as a simple subscription where each month you would redeem 2 games. So if you just subscribed, you get those 2 games for that month. Then they added the Quest Games catalog, which we actually didn't discuss in our previous episode, but I think was actually one of the most important changes of 2024 for the VR market because you get this shift to the kind of Xbox Game Pass style system where you then have a catalog of 20 or 30 or so of the top VR titles. And I would suspect that a lot of people that get a Quest 3S and get that 3-month trial of Quest Plus, right? You can see it in this Amazon listing right here, are going to spend those 3 months playing those games that they get for free rather than going out and purchasing it. And I would love to see statistics on this from Meta. I don't think the developers who are in Quest Plus are allowed to talk about that kind of usage yet. That's on Meta's side. They can't really discuss that. But that's what I'd love to see. How many of these people buy this headset, right? Because they get Batman for free. So you get this AAA full-fledged game for free that's going to take you, 10 to 20 hours to complete. You get a Meta Quest Plus for 3 months, which has these 20 extra games. That could be significantly impacting store spend.
Dunadim asking in the comments, any OG Gear VR sickos here? I love that question. People who have been here for a long time in this space remember slotting a Samsung phone into a plastic holder from Samsung and then getting the early Oculus system. They sold millions or gave away millions of those headsets to Samsung users basically for free. And there's people out there that got their start in VR development during those days before mobile really had standalone, before it had controllers. Some people had Oculus Go back in the day. It's been a long, long journey. It's a great transition to begin talking about the thing that I covered over Christmas. Are we ready to discuss that, David? Is there anything else we want to talk about the success here before we get into the problems that happened over Christmas?
Yeah, I think there's one comment here I want to answer because it's quite interesting and not something I think we've really discussed before. Paul Tuff asks, do we have any thoughts on how glasses-free 3D might help bolster VR adoption? For example, PC games gaining more 3D display options. So that's referring to the monitors that are available now in some laptops where you get, auto stereoscopic 3D in the same way you would have got with your Nintendo 3DS. I don't think that's going to change VR adoption much because 3D is only one aspect of VR. And even if you only had one eye for whatever reason, VR would still be pretty much just as magical to you, right? Because it's not just the 3D aspect, it's also the wide field of view, the positional head tracking that makes you feel like you're in the world. And of course, in many experiences, your tracked hands and or controllers that allow you to directly interact. So, we already see things like UEVR that allow you to easily add, the basic aspects of 3D and head tracking to many Unreal Engine games. And I don't think glasses or glasses-free 3D displays are going to really change that dynamic much.
Really good question here from Mario asking, did Apple stop Vision Pro production? Very complicated answer to your question. A very straightforward question, obviously. So thank you for the straightforward question. But we can't, like the answer to that question is complicated because we've got a year and a half or 2 years of reporting here of reporting about what Apple planned to do, what Apple actually did, and then it all met market expectations that were completely different from what Apple said it was going to do from the outset. So Apple basically made a headset that used future display technology that was super duper expensive. That's why the headset is $3,500, why it's out of the price range of so many people, because of that display technology. And by all indications, we understand Apple was more or less supply constrained on those display technologies, putting them in headsets, making sure there's no dead pixels, making sure there's no problems with those displays is expensive and costly, and one of the reasons that it was so hard to make the headsets that they did make. So when you start asking, did Apple stop production? We need to give you that context before you start wondering. The next question after that was Apple Vision Pro a failure? And I think that answer is a no because of the other things we're talking about here.
Yeah, I would just add to that some people have this idea that consumer electronics are produced just in time, so that you go and buy your iPhone now today, and it was made like a few days ago. In reality, a lot of these products are produced in large batches at scale and then warehoused for quite a long time. So even if they did stop production, which there's uh, it's debatable whether they may have paused it for a while or not. That doesn't mean that they're going to stop selling it anytime soon. And we do not expect at all that Apple will withdraw Vision Pro from the market before a future model is available. So there are reliable supply chain sources that indicate that they intend to release a successor to the Vision Pro with an M5 chip either very late this year or early next year. So you would expect at some point before that production will end, and then they will sell through their warehoused, batched up units before, as they spin up production on the successor.
Yeah, and year-round next saying they're watching us on Vision Pro right now. It's expensive, but I love this product. I'm there with you. I spent a lot of time in my Apple Vision Pro over the break, over Christmas. I used it on 2 train rides that were both 7 hours long. And I played games. I watched 3D movies. On New Year's Eve, I watched Wicked in 3D with my partner, watching it in 2D on our flat television. So we had a television on the wall playing Wicked in 2D. And then I had overlaid on top of it, right in front of it, the 3D version on my Apple Vision Pro. And we did a share play call between us so that I could watch the 3D version. She likes watching with captions on. She likes having the captions on. My 3D version did not have captions on. So I had and I had a version of the movie that was about twice the size of our physical television overlaid right in front of her uh, physical television. And I could call in other people. James O'Laughlin, one of our regular viewers, I had him pop in, and he's like, I don't want to watch Wicked, but he could have watched it with us. He could have share played with us from a remote position to watch that movie with us. And this was after days of reporting on what we're going to talk about next, which is the bricked Quest situation. And that's what I experienced as like after I had dealt with a day of dealing with Meta customer support, I went and tried this. And not only that, I had Steam Link up. I had my partner had a Steam Deck in her hand, and we were playing a digital board game, Clank. We love the game Clank. It's a great board game. But she had the Steam Deck in her hand, playing it right next to me, sat on this couch. I had Wicked like I just described, and then I also had the Steam Link app floating right here, right in front of me. So even though she's playing Steam Deck right here, looking at the board game, I have the board game floating right in front of me as this giant, very big screen floating right below Wicked in 3D. That's what I did in my Apple Vision Pro, and I get upset when I remember how much money I spent to have that experience. But comparing that to what my experience was with Quest 2 over the holiday, it made clear where that money went, right? Like, people who get their I feel so much frustration on behalf of the people out there who have bricked headsets at the holidays.
Let's discuss.
And yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you were on top of this reporting at the time. You got, in communication with Meta, you got those confirmation of statements. You want to run the audience through what happened here?
Yeah. So this actually was a slow rolling situation as we understand it. We saw these reports rolling out to the forums for a while that the most recent software update was causing some kind of bricking issues. People could not access their Quest 2s. We started hearing it build. We get into our email. You can email tips@uploadvr.com. And this is a perfect example where people used that email address to good effect. So I want to say thank you to all of the people that reached out to us over the Christmas holiday, confirming what they had experienced. It's really difficult to read these emails, to have the customer support kind of line that I'm sure what Geek Odin out there in the comments constantly experiences with people who have virtual desktop, right? You get these people who are like, my Quest is broken, and it's like, wait, can you please walk me through? Does the screen turn on? And they say, no, it's black. Well, okay, well, the screen is actually turning on. It's lit behind, but there's nothing displayed on it. Well, if you're a new VR user who just got your Quest out after 6 months, that's how you would describe what's going on. But that's the type of issues that we had here, right? Like headsets were turning on, but they would only display black, or they would turn on and they couldn't do anything with their headset at all. And we got these reports from users who were saying they got on the phone, they contacted Meta support, and Meta support said, you're out of luck. You need to go and get a new headset. You need to go pay $160 for a refurbished version. And it was devastating to see these emails roll in again and again and again over Christmas, and imagining these scenarios that are not even just imagining, they're written out in our emails to us over tips, where they got their kid a Christmas. They scrounged together whatever they could to get a Quest 2 for Christmas. They got handed down it from a family member, from someone who is getting rid of their Quest 2. And before they got rid of the Quest 2, they went and factory reset it, handed it over to the kid, expecting that they would get into VR for the first time with a super cheap way of getting in there. A Quest 2 makes perfect sense to do that for this holiday season. And we got a lot of these emails from about Christmas Day right into the day after Christmas, from people who are just saying that the headset was a brick. Basically, my child is very, very upset, and Meta was not helping us out at all with it. So we sent an email first, I think it was on Christmas Eve, to Meta saying, hey, what's going on here? Can you say anything? And then the day after Christmas, we followed up and we had our first article covering this. And then I saw a lot of others covered it as well in the days afterwards. But I think it was so important, this loop we've got with our viewers, with our regular readers, to email tips@uploadvr.com, because we were only able to really report on it the way we did, in the time we did, because we had all of those emails coming into us from real people saying this is what we've experienced. And we try not to report on just one of these, things. We don't want one person who's really loud out there in the audience who had one bad experience to become like the poster child of the whole community. That's not necessarily representative if one person had a bad experience. There were enough of these emails that we were able to paint a picture that this was pretty widespread. This is happening to a lot of people. And then I'm reporting on what everyone else is doing. It got to December 31st, right at the end of the year, and I decided to break out my Quest 2 and see whether this is fixed, because Meta claimed that they had put in a fix of some kind on their software server update system, and I wanted to see what would happen if I booted up a Quest 2. So I booted up a Quest 2 that hadn't been used in a while, tried to get it updated, spent maybe 4 to 5 hours over the course of 2 days rebooting the headset, waiting for it to update, letting it power to completion, uh, resetting the headset, going through all the processes, trying to sideload an update, just attempt after attempt after attempt to get this Quest 2 to work. And by the end of it, I basically had something I couldn't operate myself. Like it was stuck on the entry startup screen. So then I spent a good couple hours on the line with Meta support. Went through two Meta support people. The first person I talked to was named Nacho. Nacho was not very helpful to me with Meta support. They basically hung up on me they ended the chat, and then I took the case number to the second Meta chat and said, I just had this call end with Meta chat first. Can you help me? The first person said, I'm out of warranty and cannot be helped. And they were asking me where I bought the headset from. And I'm like, I don't know. I've had a bunch of these over the years. This is the last one in my box. I kept one around because I wanted to keep it operational and compare into the future. And this is where I'm giving you all the rundown. I haven't looked at the comments, so I'm really curious what everyone is experiencing out there, and I'd love to hear you relay some of what they're saying out there. But this is all the stuff that I experienced in setting this up, and my own process of going through MetaQuest support was awful. Like I spent hours with these people, got hung up by one support person, went to the second support person, and they kind of, they were a little bit more helpful, and they apologized for the previous conversation getting cut short. And then I got an RMA filing form. I'm going to send that Quest 2 back. But I also tried to get a Quest 1 up and running, David, right? And that's back on version 50, and it's sitting over there at version 50 stuck on a login screen. I was able to get the Quest Pro over here up to 72, and you joked with me that I still have the dead controller because I haven't wanted to go through the RMA process for the controller on this Quest Pro. But David, all I could think about as I'm dealing with this over and over and over again are your words, your darn words floating in my head. I haven't talked to you in we've had our good Christmas vacation. We haven't talked to each other in a while here, and I still had his darn words floating around in my head. And do you know what words I had floating around in my head? I bet you can figure that out. I bet you can figure it out.
I actually can't. Why don't you tell me?
Yeah, Meta leaves customers behind. Meta, yeah, that one.
Yes.
That headline. That's it kept rummaging around in my head, and it's frustrating. What was that? What was that? And what was that headline that I'm referring to, David? And what do they got in the comments for us?
Yeah, that was the article in which I argued that because of the pace of progress in VR, how quickly the hardware gets obsoleted, that Meta should really have a trade-in program. You should be able to trade in your old Quest 2 and get a discount on a Quest 3, or your old Quest 1 or your Oculus Go. They should encourage people who they've left behind with this kind of move fast and break things cliche to come into the future. And it just makes so much sense because it gets them on the platform again, buying content, engaging. That's what I argued in that editorial, I think 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's disappointing that it still hasn't happened. So my understanding of this issue is that it mostly affects Quest 2, and that Quest 3 and Quest 3S were very much so the minority, with only a small number of people there being affected. I wonder how much of this on the Quest 2 side is because of how much the account backend system has changed since then. We forget this today, but Quest 2 launched requiring a Facebook account. And there was a massive outcry against that. And eventually they took that away. They introduced the Meta account system that we all had today, right? That didn't exist when Quest 2 launched. And there was this kind of really weird transition where you had to kind of migrate your account to a Meta account. And then it connected this kind of different backend. And Meta executives and engineers have spoken about the cluster bad word that this was on there, and getting this to work on a technical level, shifting all of these systems that were designed to connect this headset to the Facebook account system, to the Meta account system. And so, if you factory reset this thing, is it going back to that old system? Is there something there where, someone has forgotten that when the Quest 2 originally launched, it didn't have this, and then the server is trying to communicate with something that it doesn't quite understand? really awful time for this to happen for people at Christmas, especially. These are likely used units. What I wonder now is how many Quest 2s does Meta still have in stock? They don't sell the headset anymore. They maybe have some, replacement units, refurbs ready. I wonder, will some of the people affected here just get sent a Quest 3S? Eventually, at some point, is this at the scale where they say, we don't have a Quest 2 for you, here's a 3S? That'll be interesting to see.
Yep, that's exactly what I was wondering as well, because they've got to be running out of stock and they have to acknowledge the severity of this issue, right? You have to make this better for people. I really want to talk about Biggs's comment because it is scary, dark, big thought to grapple with here. I think Ian is downwind of a defocusing of Quest as a hardware product. Many disagree, but I truly believe the line is being retired for lighter technology. Very, very interesting comment. So, David, I'll let you dive into that, but I want a moment to breathe in that comment and think on it and give my little aside here. I spent a good part of this year rearranging my office over and over and over again to account for the various situations that we might encounter as a VR publication, and like how I broadcast all that to the community. And I joked even earlier today on the show, right? I'm wired to the internet right now because of previous issues on this show. I'm wired from a Quest, right? I've got wired Ethernet coming to my wireless Quest headset to avoid any possible interruptions with all the things that can happen with our headsets. And in front of me, sitting like in my beautiful setup that I finally got ready for 2025, I've got the Ray-Ban glasses sitting in a case right over here, the completely displayless, the right form factor that everyone wants out of glasses. And to the left of it, I have sitting a Big Screen Beyond, one of the several Big Screen Beyonds they've sent me, one that I don't actually use. I've got a different one that I've actually got used. But you can see this Big Screen Beyond is the same form factor, the same size that we want. It's the same size as the glasses. You've got these two separate product lines that we've been harping on with this show. You've got glasses for AR and eventually all-day wear out in the real world, and then you've got VR headset. In this form factor, we actually dream about sitting right in front of me. It's like a North Star to me now across the entire VR market. The super slim glasses style, slim VR headset, right? We have spent a decade with bricks on our heads, from even Rift on downward, just these monster devices attached to our heads. And then Apple Vision Pro came along and packed everything that they possibly could imagine into this headset and made it another brick, even with offsetting a whole bunch of the brick into the sling you wear on your side. And all of this is to say that there is room for more of the Big Screen Beyond glasses form factor VR headsets in our very near future, with the strap going down to, a pocketable battery pack. And bingo, you're there with hand tracking and eye tracking, which is the interface that's been innovated with Apple Vision Pro. And it was in Quest Pro, but the eye tracking wasn't good enough, and they didn't build the entire user interface around this gaze to pinch interface. You combine all of those things, David, right? Gaze to pinch, hand tracking, super slim headset optics. You have a different kind of device. You have a device that's sold without controllers, and you have a device that has a completely different class of apps available for it than the ones that require controllers. Like, none of those controller apps are going to sell the headsets that use the pinch and gaze interface. That's what Biggs is hinting at, that we might be seeing happen in the market more broadly than just Apple. And Meta has to get its ducks in a row together to match that this year.
Yeah, I think everything you said there is valid on its own, but I'm not quite sure it's really a response to what Biggs was suggesting. And, Anakazi has a comment here saying, let's not entertain too many of these "the sky is falling" style sentiments, or we'll be here all day. And I'd have to agree on that one. Biggs' original comment was saying that he suspects Meta will defocus Quest as a hardware product. And in fact, Biggs went further than that. He said, "I truly believe the line is being retired for lighter tech." Meanwhile, 2 weeks ago, the CTO of Meta, Andrew Bosworth, did an Instagram Ask Me Anything session in which he said, not only are we working on the next Quest headset, we're working on the headset after the next Quest. And earlier last year, I almost said this year, I'm almost forgetting it's 2025, we had reporting from the information revealing Meta's roadmap showing that they plan 2 Quest 4 models for 2026, a Quest 4S and a Quest 4, essentially, a budget and a higher end one, just like we have today with Quest 3S and Quest 3. And separately to that, the information reported that Meta is working on a very lightweight headset that is kind of a steampunk glasses style form factor that does connect to a wired compute pack, but not as a replacement for Quest 4, as a separate product line. Ford can make SUVs and it can make trucks. Samsung can make fridges and it can make microwaves. There's no need for, if a company is making a new product, it doesn't always mean that they're getting rid of everything else, right? Companies are perfectly capable of selling multiple products. Apple can sell the iPad and the iPhone. I could go on for a long time on this analogy. So not only do we have that 2 weeks ago discussing of the next Quest and the Quest after that, we also talked on this show about how late last year there was that leak of a Meta focus group testing for a headset with the same code name as that Quest 4 that we had seen slated for 2026 in that report. So I expect we'll see all of the above. We're going to see lower cost general headsets that put everything into the visor with Quest 4, but even those will get slimmer and lighter over time, right? Quest 3 already took the first step of getting slimmer, and it's not overall lighter, but because it's slimmer, the moment of inertia is lower, right? The weight is closer to your face, so it doesn't have as much downward force. The next step there in Quest 4 will likely be a reduction in weight. Like if someone put a gun to my head and said, do you think Quest 4 will be lighter than Quest 3? I would say, yeah, I do think it will be. That doesn't mean that, the Quest headset line goes away. It just means you'll also get this option optimized for media watching, where you do have something that you want to be more lightweight. And when you're sitting down and watching, Wicked in 3D, you don't care about the tethered battery. But a lot of people, when they're standing up and playing Beat Saber or Population 1 or Contractor Showdown or whatever they're playing, they do care about the form factor, and they care about the cost as well, because it's cheaper to put everything in the front of the headset. And so there's no reason you couldn't have both of these things in the future. It doesn't mean the other disappears.
Well, all right. So Biggs is got my back saying that I read his comment right, and I want to continue a little bit on that thread or this line of thinking, because we're gonna come back to the HUD glasses here. We've got the HUD glasses at the end of this show that we're going to discuss, and I've got to discuss it now a little bit, or at least how it relates here.
Well, let's discuss it at the time.
I know, but so the reason, I want to talk about the defocusing here, this defocusing situation, and I want to contextualize
the claimed defocusing.
Well, yeah.
The Meta is denied, right? There was a thing on X 3 weeks ago where the CTO of Meta directly denied this.
No, sure. So let me think of a few. How do I discuss this, or how do I think about this, or how do I communicate this to this audience? It's very, very, very difficult. Meta didn't show us the Orion glasses last year. We went out to Meta Connect, and they chose to not make a spot in their schedule for us to see the Orion glasses. Our audience wondered why. I wonder why. We all wonder why. Though we do have the report breaking down exactly what is in that hardware. I was in the room, got to see them, and I got to see that, they have a QR code on the table for positional tracking. They don't want the QR code in the photographs. They had to switch devices in the middle of this thing. I had the person who put on the headset demonstrate that what 70 degrees field of view looks like. All the limitations, this pocket puck that gets the things from your pocket to the glasses, all these things that were left out of frame and not reported by other outlets broadly, we put front and center and made sure that they were included and shown in our reporting. Biggs's comment here about the defocusing thing speaks to me. I think about it very deeply. Meta can't afford to prop up the VR market forever while all of the software revenue, or a large chunk of the software revenue, gets taken by by Sony for its store, or Valve for Steam. So we know a certain chunk of Meta users go and get Steam and buy all their games from
But
Steam instead of the store.
Most don't own a gaming PC at all.
Okay. But is it enough? Is the money that Meta takes in from people who buy Quest games enough for them to make a new Facebook? Is it big enough to be 1 billion people in VR? Are they making enough? Are they capturing enough of the VR market to have dominance to make enough money that it's self-sustaining? I suggest, or I think, that one of the things we saw in the last year, the reason we didn't see Orion was because they know that Orion isn't consumer ready, and we would point out the limitations of the hardware. We would point out the limited field of view. At the same time that Meta needs to capture that entire market, they need to capture the glasses, AR, headset market. Otherwise, they don't have control of enough things. They were cut off of control of the PC market by Valve back in 2016. Valve captured that and kept them away from it.
It's small fries. It's the scale they care about. You're
calling Steam small fries. Give me a second,
it is,
David.
Of course it is. On the scale of compared to something like the iPhone App Store, it's small fries compared to the kind of tech giants. Valve is a multi-billion-dollar company, but it's not a Microsoft. It's not an Amazon. It's not a Google, and it's not a Meta. Right? It's still an order of magnitude smaller than those companies.
And I get it. So what you're describing is the aim of Meta trying to paint, go for the blue sky, everything. Let's capture it all. But what they've encountered is Valve saying you cannot go any further than Steam on PC. We're going to stop you right there.
Meta withdrew, right? Like this narrative that Valve kicked Meta out of PC. That's not what happened at all. They launched the Quest and the Rift S, and some people bought the Rift S, and a shit ton of people bought the Quest, and the Quest retention was higher. The standalone headset was higher. People were buying more games. They were using it more. They were buying it more. And they said, this is going to be our focus, right? We're going to own this market. But the question, by the way, isn't, is Quest today self-sustaining? Because of course it isn't. We report on this all the time. They make a massive loss overall. The question is, will it be by the mid-2030s? This is an investment in the long-term future. Mark Zuckerberg has been saying on earnings calls, because I listen to all of them, for years now, it's 6, 7, 8 years, this is an investment that we expect to start making returns in the 2030s. We're still 2025. We just started 2025. We've got Quest 3. Next year, we expect Quest 4. There's time for that path to build up. It doesn't have to be either or. They don't have to do just glasses or just headsets. They can easily do both, and they're complementary, right?
I love it, David. Given the bull case for Meta, the reason why they're on the right track and have been this whole time. What I have to balance that with is this feeling from all those Quest 2, Quest 1, Gear VR, Go, Rift S owners, all the ones who owned every single previous headset prior to the Quest 3 and the 3S, feeling left behind, exactly like you described in that editorial. Feeling just like you would have thought that you got the Quest 2. Okay, now I've made it. Right now, I'm not going to get bricked by Meta.
Sure, a software update though. I think we're conflating a software update, which was some engineer made a mistake somewhere, with a Facebook strategy. They still support Quest 2. Your Quest 2 still gets the latest updates. The vast majority of apps on the store still support it from launch. We've seen a handful of Quest 3 exclusives, most of which have featured some sort of mixed reality capability. But, my editorial was about leaving Quest 1, Rift S, and Go owners behind. And I think that's valid. But I don't think Meta has left Quest 2 owners behind, right? We're coming into 2025. Quest 2 released in 2020, and they are still supporting it to this day, to their credit, right? I do still think they should have a trade-in program, but I acknowledge that Quest 2 sold more than all of those past headsets combined, right? You have to understand that the market today is so much bigger than it was back then.
Well, so Geek Odin's comment, and QA didn't catch this issue, assuming they even have QA. And I want to, let's just say there's 25 million Quest 2. Let's just throw out a number here. We're just guessing. Let's guess there was 25 million Quest 2s. So making that number up, let's guess that there's tens of millions of these Quest 2s. Did they have a QA testing person who goes and unboxes a Quest 2 every time they release a new software update. They open up the Quest 2, they pull the headset out of the box, they put it up on their head, and they go through the whole flow of updating this headset to the most recent software after each new version. Does Meta employ that person? Do they have a well-paying job that gets that person who has like a stack of Quest 2s over here that they pull out each new time? Or did they switch their focus to 3 and 3S? Do they stop checking every single time on the elder headsets? And that's the leaving people behind thing that we tend to have.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really frustrating, right? You've got Mark Rabkin, the head of Horizon OS, and the head of that effort. He's over on Threads and Twitter releasing statements. And one of his statements with this whole issue was almost all of those should be working now, or almost all of those affected should be working now. But it was worded in such a way that it was enormously frustrating to me. And the reason it was worded so carefully is, if you think of the headsets, like of the people that have broken open a Quest 2, those 25 million headsets, let's imagine that only 3 million of those 25 million are in active use at any given time. That like 3 million of those 25 that were sold over 4 years are actually being like plugged in and ready for a software update at any given time. And then of those 3 million, only 1 million or 500,000, let's say, actually get put on a person's head in any given month.
Well,
so on a rotating basis.
Hold on, this number was 6 million in late 2022. So I think you got to really increase these numbers, right? Unless you think a huge percentage of those upgraded the Quest 3 and 3S.
You're saying 6 million was the active monthly on which headsets?
On Quest 2 in October 2022, if I recall correctly. It may be plus or minus a few months from that.
So 3. I'm guessing number. I like David's trying to get me to task.
No, but continue your point. I just think the numbers are higher, but continue your point.
It's like the old test of how do we know if we're alone in the universe, where you start imagining the number of habitable worlds and then you start cutting down from there to the ones that have intelligent life that are alive right now. That's the situation we've got with Quest 2s that are in active use right now, to have been put on a person's head to identify that the headset is not operational. That's my point. Is you've got, let's say it's 500,000 or 1 million Quest 2s at any one time that are being turned on to verify that they've been bricked or that there's some kind of update problem. How many Quests, all of this, how many Quest 1s and 2s are out there sitting in the ether waiting to be turned on and find that a person has a brick in their hands?
Yeah,
that's my question.
I understand what you're saying. I just want to be crystal clear here about what I completely agree with you on, right? I want to be clear. The fact that they did this, that they released an update that bricked these Quest 2s, my understanding is these were mostly headsets that hadn't been used in a very long time. So you're going from a very low version number to a very high version number. That's unacceptable. And these comments about, the QA needing to be better is completely true. If you sell a consumer electronics device like this aimed at mainstream consumers, Meta should have better testing. And it is very much so inexcusable that Meta did this. All I disagree on is the extrapolation that we get to then, that somehow this has got something to do with like focusing on glasses and not caring about headsets anymore. This was a mistake that may well have been because they didn't invest enough in QA. Sure, that's absolutely true. But I don't think that's ever been I don't think Meta has ever invested enough in QA. They kind of have this reputation for this kind of behavior, right? They even have that old, now retired, but still connected to the motto of move fast and break things. I just don't think that this has anything to do with like a wider, these Quest 2s were bricked because Meta just doesn't care about headsets anymore. It's just it's a software glitch that someone is responsible for.
Well, sure. So I appreciate that level-headed takedown, but it still feels like a slap in the face as a customer. If you went off in this company and you're like, I believe in Meta. I believe in VR, right? This is the future. We don't need physical screens. We've got displays that we can wear on our heads. Let's do it. I'm with you, Meta. And you go and spend $200 or $300, and then 3 years later, your headset has been left in the dust and it doesn't age the same as other pieces of hardware. It gets
But again, you're saying this as if the Quest 2 is still a supported headset, right? It is still getting the latest software versions. Again, the vast majority of apps still support it. In fact, if you speak to developers, the developers I spoke to before Christmas were telling me that the majority of their users are still Quest 2, right? That's still the case. We're talking about Quest 2 here like it's some sort of like 30-year-old console. The majority of VR users today, right now, most likely, are still using
Okay.
Quest 2.
Oh, okay.
That's,
So, but
just want to be clear
David,
about that.
my point is, or so go to Mark Rabkin's numbers, right, and his thing that most people aren't affected. And we had Don in our comments, VR gamer dude, and he went and tested his Quest 2. So he would be in Mark Rabkin's number of most people would not be affected. So Don Hopper went and got his Quest 2 out. He's on version 71. I think he even marked in our comments that he's on a recent version of the operating system. And he's like, started up fine. And those would be the people that Mark would be referring to as being fine. If you're an active Quest user, you're using your headset every other month, you're keeping it plugged in, it's getting the latest software updates, your headset is good to go. This was not an issue for you. You never noticed this. But that's not the way Meta has sold these headsets, and it's not the way people use these headsets. People use these headsets in like spurts. Some people, the regular users, use them every day or once every couple of days, and those are the people that weren't affected by this. But the vast majority of people who have Quests, the ones who have put them away, those people went to go bring those things out and use them for their once in a year moment to go try VR again and check in and see how it is. And those were the ones that were left behind by this situation.
Right. I spoke to a few people, like I do know a few people who did crack out their Quest 2 for the holidays and they didn't have an issue. So we don't know the scale of this. We know it does affect a significant number of people, but we don't know the scale of this. What we do need to follow up on and make sure is that Meta support does give these people a replacement. And the support response you got first, that they're not in warranty and therefore it's not their problem, that's obviously completely unacceptable, and we need to make sure we follow up with our viewers about this. If this has happened to you, please let us know. If you are being told by Meta support that you're not getting another one, that you're not getting a replacement, and that it's not in warranty anymore, let us know. We want to make sure we understand what's happening here. But again, I just want to be clear. It's a mistake. They didn't do this on purpose, right? And I'm not saying that gets them off the line. I'm just saying it doesn't say anything about their strategy.
It does say something about their strategy, doesn't it, David? Doesn't it?
It's about their operations, right? That they don't test things enough, that they make software, that they don't have a rigorous enough software. But it doesn't say anything about like what they like, that they have some sort of grand plan of, we're going to leave these Quest 2s behind and brick them. Like, of course they didn't mean to do that. It's a headset that launched 4 years ago. They've changed the entire count system. They made a mistake. Again, I want to be crystal clear. I'm not excusing that mistake, and that every single person affected by this, if their headset is truly bricked, should get a new headset. Absolutely, they should. I'm not disagreeing with that in the slightest. And if support is saying to them that they shouldn't, then that's bad support, and Meta should be absolutely criticized for that. Mm-hmm. I don't think this has anything to do with like a grand strategy.
No, David, you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to do with grand strategy. Like I hate the last thing. Everything you say is right until the last thing of, can we judge Meta as a whole on this? Is there things we can take away?
I just don't think it's okay. I don't think it's about their intention and choice. Maybe strategy is the wrong word here, but I don't think it's a reflection of their priorities and choices. I do. When it comes to the future of the company and whether we can extrapolate of, are they going to make Quest 4 or something? It's got nothing to do with that.
So James Olaf, and their strategy is to ship at scale and pace to capture a market and not care about user experience. Would you agree with that, David?
Let's read the comment here. The strategy to ship at scale and pace to capture a market and not care about user experience. I think that's a little bit oversimplified. I think in general, yes, their focus is to grow this market, right? There's so often people in the comments wondering, why doesn't Meta make leg trackers, or why don't they support, XYZ feature? The reality is what they care about doing is getting this to be, there's an irony here where people are saying, VR is not at a self-sustaining market size. And then people are saying, why is Meta trying to grow VR at all costs? But that's why, right? It needs to be, if you want this ecosystem that you're talking about where developers do get all this spend, you need people, right? You need people with headsets that own headsets. And if your focus as a company isn't on growing the market, then that's not going to contain the growth that developers need to build bigger and better projects.
So let's meet in the middle here a little bit, or at least give some words of recommendation to Meta. I don't know, like I want to take away here from what David is saying, because he's absolutely right, and there's the level headedness of who is it? Jorg in our comments saying you can judge Meta however you want, but you're not living in the reality of updating millions of headsets. I appreciate that context too. That's accurate. Um, but that's where we are in the market. You need to be updating millions of headsets. They need to have a customer support infrastructure for tens of millions of consumer buyers who are now going to be buying headsets from a variety of different headset makers out there. What David has pointed out in the past, if you go and buy a Pico headset in the United States, you're buying a headset without any amount of support whatsoever, right? You're getting a headset that effectively, if there's anything wrong with your Pico and you bought it in the United States, you're out of luck. You're done. You're done. You have a dead headset. You're not getting anything fixed. My point that I've experienced here personally, and the thing that that I saw in our comments was exactly what Derek is saying. If their update bricked my Quest 2 and they didn't fix it, no way in heck I would be buying a Quest ever again. And I got those emails from people on Christmas Day. Your child is upset, and their Christmas was dramatically changed by a bricked software update. Your trust is eroded permanently. And think about that. This was Meta's chance to prove that they are a consumer electronics company. They're trying to build trust with these people for the future. And you can imagine a bunch of those people, like I got those emails saying just they're devastated and they had a horrible time, but I did get several of those emails following up saying Meta reached out again and now we're going to get a free headset. Meta made this right. So they're doing exactly what, so in some instances they're doing exactly what David said. But the thing, I got to December 31st myself and I went through the whole process, and I got through 2 hours of customer support people to be finally given an RMA replacement Quest, while the Quest 1 sits over there stuck on an old software update. Like I can't get it past the safety thing. George, I get you're right. Like updating millions of headsets and changing the account systems, all of that. Like I get it. You're explaining to me why the headset is not operational, but you're also explaining an enormous amount of frustration as this company tries to pretend that it's the same kind of consumer electronics company that Apple is, even though they don't have the personnel and the departments to match many of the services Apple offers. If I have a problem with my Apple Vision Pro, there are physical locations I can go to at any hour of the day here in my city and get it repaired, replaced, and changed under warranty. You cannot do that with a Meta headset right now.
Sure, that's completely true, but you could say that for almost all other electronics companies, right? If my Pixel phone gets broken, Google does not have a physical store I go to. They do have partnerships with some local stores, and that's great, and Meta could follow that model, but Apple's retail strategy was a stroke of genius from Steve Jobs at the time that, by the way, the much of the media criticized and thought was stupid at the time. He proved them completely wrong with how valuable that's turned out for Apple. But I don't think that's a fair judgment. What is a fair judgment is, as we keep saying, how we keep track of whether Meta is doing that for all customers, giving that replacement. Afro Badger has a great comment saying, let's go back to the Xbox Red Ring of Death, the Samsung batteries. All of these companies make mistakes. The question is, how do they handle the fault? And again, I want to be crystal clear that if anyone is being told by Meta support that they don't get a replacement because of this issue, then that is utterly unacceptable, and we will keep following up on it. Tell us, go use our contact form on our website or email tips@uploadvr.com. We will highlight the issue if Meta is at scale not providing these headsets. Hopefully, now that all of the support agents have kind of been briefed on the issue, this did happen on Christmas week. I imagine a lot of people at Meta were just off and not available. Hopefully, you have this situation where the information that this is a wide-scale issue has now been proliferated out to the support agents, and they're able to provide that replacement. We will keep on top of that. That's what, right? I think we kind of have to leave this one there because we're going to have to see what happens next. We don't know, we'll keep an eye on it. Do they provide those replacements? If they do, that's the right thing. If they don't, we will highlight it.
And I think the thing is, I would like to understand the scale. Meta, please share details about the scale of this issue. And especially if it is this case where if your headset has been left, like I hope this is an ongoing fix, that they have a policy in place that like if your Quest 2, 6 months from now, if you unbox your Quest 2 that's been sitting in a box for a year and a half and you encounter this issue, my hope would be that they fix it even then, right? Like you still get a replacement for the headset despite the rolling nature of it. And that's the reason I was belaboring this whole issue for so long, is if this affects all of those headsets, the millions and millions that are left in boxes, I hope those people are taken care of, not just the ones that discovered this at Christmas time and got in with Meta support while reporters like myself were reporting on it and making a big, I hope those people 6 months from now are still helped. I hope I'm not getting emails to tips@uploadvr.com saying Meta gave me a brick and then support is saying I can't get it replaced. That's what I don't want to see. And I just let us know. Email tips@uploadvr.com. And especially, let us know the good things too. If you get it replaced, let us know what actually happened. Okay. If you didn't, let us know. Those reports help. So we were only able to cover this in a timely way. I want to say thank you to our patrons for supporting us. We think of our patrons when we work long hours and work odd hours to try to cover the VR market. It's a very direct relationship between the people who are members and patrons supporting our work and the drive to cover this. I think we really want to see justice out there for the people who are affected negatively by this stuff.
Yeah, I hope and wonder if your reporting may have influenced Meta's kind of public response there. I think we were the first to bring it to wide-scale public attention. So some commenters here are pointing out something important, that update, the faulty update has now been pulled. So people who do unbox their Quest 2 now or bring it out of the closet or cupboard, that shouldn't happen to them anymore. So the idea was, what was happening here is there was a faulty update. It was getting pulled down to the headset, and then that update would brick it. It wasn't the headset like bricking itself while it was in storage. So now, as assuming they haven't somehow done the same thing again or do the same thing again, if someone does get a used Quest 2 or take their thing out, as long as they didn't have it out during last week when this issue was happening, the headset should work.
So let's go back to the bigs and get off of this a little bit, but talk about the focus on glasses a little bit, because the thing I lost in going on that tangent previously was just the thing. David he pulls out a chart. I don't know if he'll pull it out right now, but we're going to have dual lines of devices. We'll have headsets, we'll have glasses. The thing that I think we're in debate about, the thing we're going to have to decide how things work is, are we ever going to have mixed reality VR headsets that are comfortable to wear in public spaces? I'm going to argue that Vision Pro and Quest are entirely usable now in trains, planes, and planes, trains, public transit where you're privately seated for a long ride. A Quest 3, a Vision Pro is entirely usable in public in those places. It's not very socially acceptable to use the headsets because they're so darn bulky right now, even though they technically can be used. But people get confused. What's the path forward? And I guess we should explain it again. Start this year off with this chart again.
Yeah, I really just have to come back to this analogy to the present day of laptops and phones. It's the exact same situation with a laptop. You could crack out a laptop on a plane, on a train, on a bus, even at times, in a cafe. We're going to see these headsets, these VR style headsets, mixed reality headsets, XR headsets, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't matter, used in those same sort of scenarios. I don't see anytime soon it becoming normal, practical, or socially acceptable to wear one of these headsets while walking down the street in your daily life, or like while you get on a bus. Maybe it'll happen eventually, but that doesn't seem likely for quite a long time, even if they do have the kind of eyesight display that Vision Pro has. Whereas the eventual glasses, we'll talk soon about HUD glasses and then eventual AR glasses, those are going to be the kind of device that you're able to take around, walk down the street, get on a bus, talk to the bus driver, and continue to go along alongside your day. And as we say over and over on this show, if you're new to it, you won't have heard the spiel. When you leave the house, you're going to pick up your AR glasses and put them on and walk away. And then when you get back home, you're going to put those AR glasses back on a dock or back in the case and pick up your headset for a much more immersive and high fidelity experience.
So I'm gonna lose our audience here, and I guess gotta push through here, but I gotta paint this picture that Meta has built an ecosystem for itself around its tracked controllers, right? You go from Oculus Touch all the way through to these simple little things that have some lights inside of them, but no extra tracking rings. They're incredible. And every great VR game, almost every great VR game, we only have one, I think, that we recommend that doesn't use controllers. Maestro is better with just open air hand tracking in the air than with controllers. We've got one game that we're like, hand tracking is stellar for this on the ecosystem. But I want to point out this thing that like Apple Vision Pro based around hand tracking. And if you go look at what's happened at Steam, all this frustration that people have been like, where is Valve on the games? Why hasn't Valve made more games? Well, they went and made one of the best, if not the best, game for tracked controllers that's ever been made. And they said, okay, we're done here. We're gonna wait for something else to happen. And what we see in Steam and in Apple Vision Pro is support for hand tracking. You have hand tracking at a basic system-wide level, both in Steam and Steam VR and in Apple Vision Pro, and you have it in the MetaQuest ecosystem. But the MetaQuest ecosystem is still anchored around all these games. Where I'm going, where we all know we've been going, is what happens when you have a bunch of track controllers around you all the time. What happens when it becomes an open standard where I can go and pick up my Quest controllers and take them, and now they work with my Apple Vision Pro? Or what happens with the Steam, the Sony controllers, if suddenly they're compatible with the Apple Vision Pro? What happens when traditional gamepads are more compatible? This is my long-winded way of saying, like, when we move to hand tracking, there's an open opportunity for like Meta to be upended, but also to take advantage of this switchover, right? To open up the controller Oculus Touch ecosystem so that they're like even open for themselves, to open up the Sony ecosystem so that those controllers are available. How do each of these ecosystems evolve to support to support hand track in the open air with controllers that you bring in over time? We're going to see that changeover happen in 2025. What happens to, like, I think we're going to see a completely different ecosystem for controllers at the end of this year versus the start of this. I didn't get to cover it in our end of the year discussion last year. But
Sure.
I think it's going to be the big change here is how controllers are seen by VR headsets. Cannot stand. It's going to change over the course of this year.
In classic VR download style, you've brought up one topic and then jumped to another and then brought
I
up
know.
three of the most controversial topics all at once. I don't really know where to respond there. I think there's kind of too many things at once. I'm going to just stick to what we were just talking about here because we have some audience discussion here. Paul Tuff said, nope, why put down the glasses if they are so useful? This is quite difficult to explain if you haven't really tried these glasses, because a lot of the time you're going to have this idea in your head that like these glasses are just like the mixed reality you get on your Quest 3 or Apple Vision Pro, except you have a transparent, perfect view of the real world. And the reality is that when you try waveguide glasses, you're going to be deeply disappointed because they suck in a lot of ways that you don't know until you try them, and that a lot of the kind of hysterical rave reviews of the Orion prototype won't really let you know. So there are a bunch of different reasons to start. Firstly, for fully immersive content, you're going to be able to see the periphery, right? You can have open periphery VR style headsets too, but with glasses, you're confined to that always. The other thing is that they can't do full opacity. So yes, you could dim the entire display. There's some prototypes of very expensively dimming some parts of the display, but you can't render full opacity. The next is that the field of view is deeply constrained. Even when the Orion prototype is talked about as a 70-degree field of view, that is diagonal. And if you talk about the diagonal field of view of a Quest 3, that's like 140 or so degrees. So you have to understand that even that, which can't be shipped as a product, we're going to go on all of our VR download rants today. Welcome to 2025. Even that prototype, which has a field of use so wide that they cannot ship that as a product, not even in a few years, you will still see objects, a slice of objects. So you lose object permanence. You're looking around the room, and instead of all of these mixed reality objects and enhancements that you see on your headset, you just see a slice of them as you go around the room. And that's deeply impactful to use cases. Even if you talk about basic productivity, right? Having your triple virtual screens, your giant ultra wide. Well, in Vision Pro or a Quest, you're seeing like 100, 110 degrees wide of that ultra wide display. In your glasses, you're seeing this little slice of that display as you turn around, not all at once. There's a dramatic difference. And so essentially, the reality is that you don't magically get the mixed reality of this in this. This is using transparent waveguide displays is a trade-off that's made for the form factor and social acceptability. It's not what you would choose if you're trying to design the ideal device. So what we expect to see happen in the course of this decade is that these headsets are going to get a lot better pass-through. Quest 3 and Apple Vision Pro are first generation pass-through. It's going to get a lot better before you even see acceptable AR glasses that even get to the level of the Orion prototype. So that's kind of the answer to that. When it comes to controllers, that's a really great point that Meta is going to be, of the major tech companies like Google and Apple, the only one that's still including controllers as we come into 2025. You confirmed with Samsung in your reporting that those controllers there are going to be optional and not included in the box. With Apple Vision Pro, we expect, based on Bloomberg's reporting, that PlayStation VR 2 controllers will start being sold separately. But again, developers, as you rightly point out, are going to build around what's there in the box. The one pushback I have on mostly agreeing with you is that I don't think this is a shift away from controllers or a shift to hand tracking. I think that there are many use cases of this technology that don't need controllers, but I still see that for the use cases that exist today, the hardcore gaming that people still do, controllers are not going away anytime soon. And in fact, what we see with these hand tracking devices are not a change in the current market, but an expansion into a new market with new use cases like watching Wicked in 3D or having your giant ultra wide virtual display that you don't need to pick up controllers to use.
Man, there's a lot to consider here, and yeah, I appreciate us going all over the bingo card for 2025. Spatial sports is everyday use. Yeah, I want my Sony controllers on the charging stand. I want it to sit over there on my deck of things to use to pull out from my Vision Pro. And the moment I want to go into Half-Life Alyx or play Beat Saber or Synth Riders or any fully immersive VR game on the Apple Vision Pro, I want to go grab those controllers, go into full VR, and enjoy the best of everything, right? An OLED screen, wide field of view,
And
controller
that's what's going to
haptics
happen,
and
right?
resistance. Yeah.
So
And I'm there. Where I'm going to go with this, and like disagree with Biggs a little bit, is all we need for that. Once I have that, right, the OLED, the haptics, the controller, once I have that dream system that's $3,800 when you add the controllers to the Apple Vision Pro, right? The next thing we need to see happen is the price halved, the weight halved on that product line, right? And so far we had Meta do this, right? Like Meta was pushing out for years with the Quest ecosystem, where the controllers are there, the headset is there, and here's our system that's based around all of that. But they've reached as far as they can go with cell phone quality graphics on track controllers and all the software that they have to push through. Like, you can only do so much when you have to have a third party handle the PC connection and hand over all of those things to other people. I know Geek Odin out there is one of the supporters of Android XR. He's been messing with Virtual Desktop on Android XR. But Google has the way to answer some of what Apple does on an ecosystem level with jumping from system to system. My point is, okay, if Apple's able to half the cost of that system, of let's say it's $3,500, you bring it down to $2,000 or $1,500, And now you've got eye tracked VR with controllers you can add to the system, and you've got the OLED screen in there, and you've got this system that has a soft strap on the back so you can use it in bed. The hand tracking is great no matter what kind of lighting you've got. You've got a spatial computer that's now affordable. It now has controllers to use with all the great VR games that are out there. If you want to add a PC or a Mac and get some great VR games that are controller tracked, you could add them with your Vision Pro. And then you start thinking about the Android XR based headsets that come in. You imagine a Valve headset that does the same ecosystem, that does hand tracking plus controller tracking. You get the benefit of all of these things. It's very hard to speak to an audience of people who every game that they've ever enjoyed, every game they've ever loved in VR has been a controller track game, and tell them, okay, you're actually going to love using your hands in VR with controllers as well. Like, it's going to be even better than what you enjoyed now, and you're going to use it for longer because you don't have to take the hardware with you. It's very hard to make that case. It's why we've got the Big No card, because we have to explain this again and again. The market is just going to get bigger as we bring in our open air hand tracking, and we're so darn close. This is the year it's going to happen.
I mean, a lot of Quest owners have tried this, right? You say this as if Quest hasn't had hand tracking for years, that there aren't, you can go and play Cubism, you can go and play all of the Maestro. This is a thing that any Quest owner in our audience can do right now. The reality is, even when you get better hand tracking, we've just seen hand tracking 2.3 launch, there's still going to be a bunch of use cases you need controllers. And the people who are in our audience that are talking about these games, they're not going to magically start opening their hands, because no matter how good the tracking gets, you don't have you don't have controller-based haptics. You don't have any kind of haptics. You don't have the ability to have rich input. It's going to be great, and more people are going to use hand tracking the controllers. To be clear, way more people, but not for hardcore gaming.
So I'm playing Gears and Goo on Apple Vision Pro. It's a game that's coming out very, very soon for all you Apple Vision Pro owners out there. I recommend going and getting Gears and Goo. Very, very, very cool game. That's what I spent a large amount of my time playing on those train rides. They have a new gesture in Gears and Goo that I haven't seen elsewhere. It might be in Demio, and I just have forgotten that it's there. But it's your middle finger pinched with your thumb, and you do it on both hands. You middle finger pinch, both thumb. You have your game board mapped out, floating right in front of you. You take your middle finger pinch, and you can resize the entire game board as you want. You can move it around like this, and just do this simple little gesture to move everything around. And so I've got this tower defense game where you've got your starting land right here, and it's like, oh, you know what? I want my starting land over here. So I pinch these together, I move the map over here, and I'm good to go. And then the entire interface is using the eye-tracked pinches. So I've got a full tower defense game with all my little minions going down their little path, and I've got the bad guys coming on their path over to where I am. And I just look at the item I want, look at the menu, and I pinch using the other pinch. I use this pinch, and I select all of my items. A full tower defense game, completely controllable, with my eyes looking at things and then pinching, and then using this new gesture to move the map around. This game, from I think it's Resolution Games, is the first one that I've tried that used this specific gesture, and it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. But here's the interesting thing about it, David. This game, I can't turn to virtual reality. I can't use the dial to rotate the environment out of my experience. So here's this great game, and it's like, I just want to forget the real world for a little while and just focus on my game. Can't do that because of the way this game was architected, the way it uses Apple's operating system. And here's this first of its kind, at least for me, using this system to move it around. Without this gesture to move around this game floating in front of me with hand tracking, it might not be playable. It probably wouldn't be playable. And this is the first one to do it. We need 10 more games that all do this.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly agree with you that the gaze and pinch interaction system of Apple Vision Pro, pointing with your eyes and clicking with your fingers, is going to be the default interaction system for XR. Of course, we see Google and Samsung following, as you tried in their Android XR headset. Meta is very, very likely to follow with Quest 4 in 2026. We know from the reliable reports that Meta all but confirmed that the 2027 lightweight Puffin headset with the compute puck from Meta will use this same gaze and pinch interaction system. Absolutely. And you're right to say that, a tower defense game is a great example, but that's the kind of game that people play on their iPads and their iPhones, and that's fine. And more people play games on their iPad and their iPhone than play games on an Xbox or PlayStation. But if you kind of look at like a revenue level impact for large developers and cultural impact, there still is this important focus on those games, and they didn't go away, right? And that, nobody said when the iPhone, well, some people said it, but they were wrong. But when the iPhone and iPad came out, that we're going to see a shift away from games consoles. Instead, the games console market expanded slightly, but relative to the population stayed roughly similar. And then you had this 10 times bigger new market of gamers that used their iPhone and iPad to play tower defense games. So that's what we'll likely see with XR, right? So you may see that if there are 10 million active users of the kind of VR gaming we see today with controllers, perhaps that peaks at 100 million in 5 or 10 years from now. But then 1 billion people on top of that are using these ultra lightweight mixed reality glasses to, have virtual screens for 3D movies and their productivity setup and scrolling TikTok and playing a tower defense game all at once, and never pick up the controllers optional. I think you're definitely right to say that there is this enormous potential and market for this entirely intuitive interaction system paired with lightweight mixed reality headsets with really ultra sharp, high quality pass through coming in the next 5 or 10 years. But there'll still be this maybe 10 times smaller, but still 100 million size people that are sitting there using track controllers of games that simply could not be built without track controllers.
So Mistora's Mars saying, I can type pretty fast now with eye and pinch here. And with respect to the person who was frustrated by us jumping around, let's get on to our next subject here as quickly as we can to try to get back onto the subject.
But let's try to focus here a little bit.
Yeah, I did want to just reply to Mistora's Mars there saying, I can type pretty fast now with eye and pinch. I do feel that. So I tried Figment XR. Figment XR hit the Apple Vision Pro store right before the end of the year. Go check it out. We consider it the best mixed reality app there is right now. And go see our previous reporting and our previous shows where I got co-location working between a Quest 3 and an Apple Vision Pro. But in that app, they have Look to Type, where you can use his keyboard that he's custom built for his operating system with Look to Pinch. And sure enough, switching back and forth between a Quest 3 and an Apple Vision Pro in the same piece of software is the first time I started experiencing exactly what you just described, feeling a little bit of frustration at not being able to look at the keys and just pinch as I go was slower on the Quest 3. And until you have parity of software, the same app and some app that supports pinch, that you don't feel it. But it's starting to build now. You're starting to feel that frustration, and eye tracking is going to win out over the long term. And I'm wondering over the course of 2025, is Quest going to get more frustrating to use because it doesn't have eye tracking as we start seeing these interfaces embrace eye tracking more? Let's move on, David.
Sure, yeah, let's definitely move on. The last thing I would say is I strongly expect the Quest for both models, even the low-end one, will have eye tracking of some sort. It's absolutely, as you say, far less frustrating for simple interfaces. And yeah, we strongly expect that every headset from 2025 onwards that is designed to be like a full spatial computer, not just a specific PC use case, will have eye tracking. It does seem like it is an essential part of the future. Let's discuss this one really quickly because I don't even think we need to have some sort of discussion or debate here. This is something we just wanted to point out. That Meta is now offering a 10% education discount in the US. So that means if you're a student or educator in the US, you can now get a Quest 3S for $270 or a Quest 3 for $450. And the only verification that there seems to be here is having a .edu email address, which my understanding is any student or educator in the US would have. This is the same exact 10% discount that Apple offers for most of its products for education. It's a industry standard in the tech industry, as far as I know, that there is some sort of student discount given. Ironically, of course, the one product or the one of the very few products that Apple does not offer the student discount on is Apple Vision Pro.
Yep. We should move on to the next subject then, as quickly as we can. We got the comments ongoing. Device-based inputs continue to achieve levels of control and precision that cannot be matched by alternatives like gaze and gesture. Did anyone try drawing a circle with gaze? Good point. Though I will point out that that there's a really cool, check out Figment XR and the way that they have the kind of like raycast pointer, and you've got this little point that's right out from your pinch a little bit, and you can paint in the open air pretty well. I wouldn't say a perfect circle, but it's very, very interesting and very, very cool technology.
I think, the one thing we should balance here is that it's hand tracking without controllers on Vision Pro is often more frustrating than controllers on Quest. So if you compare Quest 3 with hand tracking and no eye tracking to Vision Pro with hand tracking and eye tracking, sure, Vision Pro is going to feel a lot better, a lot less frustrating. But if you just pick up those, lightweight Touch Plus controllers that don't even have rings anymore and just start pointing, that feels better than any hand tracking system we've seen to date. And so, of course, though, as you point out, there's a portability trade-off there. There's the fact you don't have your hands free. If you're using a keyboard or something, it's a lot less convenient to have to go constantly from your mouse and keyboard to controllers. Ideally, you have both, but I think for a lot of people using their Quest, it's not going to be frustrating because the majority of them are just going to use the controllers as they have since they picked up the thing, right?
Yeah, so Jorg pointing out, it is only people that have access to an eye track device that miss it when they go use the Quest 3. I think that's true, and it's what you're saying, David. It's a related idea.
Not quite. I'm just saying if they use their controllers, they won't be. But if you use your hand tracking, of course, you're going to find that if you're pinching at a distance with your Quest 3 or your Quest 2 or your Quest 3S, anyone who has one in the comments will know, you can take your hand out and pinch at a distance, but you'll notice that the cursor is going to be just a little bit unstable because any tiny error in the tracking will be magnified at the distance. Now, to Meta's credit, with the latest update, they have made this cursor a lot better. I wasn't expecting them to be able to do this, but they've clearly got some sort of filtering and intention based sort of adjustment going on here. Then on the latest software update, it may even be a sub update, so you have to actually get it rolled out even after you get the update. Notice how much more stable the cursor has gotten. That's actually really impressive. But at the end of the day, I do think sometimes if you're trying to use your Quest 3 without controllers, with hand tracking, you're going to get a little frustrated. And even if you've never used an eye-tracked headset, the idea is that gets less frustrating, because there was a very interesting kind of thing that happened when Ian used the Samsung Android XR headset, where he kind of said, I'm not quite sure if they were even using gaze and pinch at this point, but they were. And the reason is that gaze and pinch works so well when it's done right that it almost feels like you don't have eye tracking at all. It feels like you're pointing with your hand, and you often think you're pointing with your hand, but you're actually, there's this kind of integrated input idea that's going on where it knows that your hand tracking is a little bit glitchy, but it knows that your eyes are looking at that control, so it keeps the cursor locked on there. And that's kind of the magic of combining. It's not just eye tracking, it's eye tracking and hand tracking combined in the perfect way.
So Big saying, once you're fully embodied in XR, then you lose it. It feels like a weird reality gap. No one knows what they're missing since you need PCVR setup to experience it. I appreciate that. Once you start kicking a ball, you kick a ball for the first time in VR, and you see the soccer ball roll away really believably, even though you've just, you kicked all you did was flick your ankle, right? The moment that you have that and then it's gone, it's going to feel awful. It's going to feel bad. And I think going back to the glasses headset discussion, we have to just keep harping that point that VR headsets, their field of view are 100 and above. Like the smallest field of view headsets you'll see are maybe at 90 degrees. And
that's horizontal. If you measure that diagonal the same way Meta measures Orion, it's well beyond 100 degrees. But continue.
Yeah, so imagine that is the magic of these headsets. If you take away that, you start taking away a person's presence. You start taking away the magic that makes them feel like they're actually there. And that's why the glasses aren't going to be able to get there on field of view. Why we desperately want the field of view to increase from the current VR headsets. But like, I just have to go. If you start talking about anything less than 90, you start talking about 70, 80, 50, any degree field of view under 100 or under where we are now, it's similar to what Biggs is saying here. You feel that absence. You feel lesser in VR just by that
And
being gone.
Big's point about the body tracking, which is what I believe they're referring to, is deeply important too, right? That yes, we've only just seen Quest 3 and Quest 3S, these headsets get inside out upper body tracking. And as I shout about often, almost no app actually uses it, including Meta's own avatars, which is an absolute travesty. They have, it's just, let me just take 30 seconds to rant about this. These two headsets have a unique feature that no other headset on the market has, that is incredible, that the creator of Boneworks and Bone Lab called the most important innovation since tracked controllers, and yet no one uses it. Almost no app uses it. But let's not rant about that for now. We have our Don Hopper, our UploadVR's Don Hopper, in the comments saying that his wife works in the public school system as a teacher and does not have a .edu email address. So just to clarify here, my understanding here is that this is about tertiary education, as in university and college, not secondary. So this is about, being in a university or being there. But again, maybe I'm wrong about that as well. I'm not American, so I'm just going off what I understand.
Yeah, so James is harping on the AR being different from VR thing. I'm gonna I'll leave this subject. Let's get to the next subject here, but I'm going to leave this note that I think augmentation is the key from AR. I think you're going to get augmentation, but you're not going to get the augmented reality. You're not going to reskin the environment the same way you reskin the environment in virtual reality. Like, it's just a different purpose for different types of content.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go further than that. I think field of view absolutely does matter, even if you're doing nothing to the environment. Like, we talk about the Pokemon test often. The reality is that the field of view on every AR device that can actually be shipped today, and yes, I have tried the Magic Leap 2, is such that you only see a segment of most objects. The Pokemon test we talk about is, imagine Ian and I met up in a park in real life to have a Pokemon battle. With all the AR devices today, except perhaps to some extent Orion, which cannot be turned into a product. I'm going to say that for the 50 millionth time on this show. You cannot see your opponent's Pokemon and your Pokemon at the same time. You can look forward and see a segment of their Pokemon if it's a big one, not even the whole thing, or you can look down and see your Pokemon, again, the whole thing if it's a little tiny Pokemon, or a segment of it if it's a big Pokemon, but you cannot see these things at the same time. And there are many Pokemon, as Ian has pointed out in articles before, that are, very large, that it would be comical to use. You would never, ever, from any realistic vantage point, be able to see the entire creature at once. So this is more jarring than VR field of view. In fact, it's actually more important, because it's not like what surrounds it is blackness like in VR. What surrounds it is transparency. So it seems as if there's no realness, no permanence, no existence to this object. You have to get far enough away that it gets contained within the field of view. And I said this when I tried the Snap AR spectacles, right? You had this whack-a-mole game where you used your hands, your fists to punch the table in front of you and play whack-a-mole. Everyone knows whack-a-mole, except the game table was large enough, the whack-a-mole design was large enough that I couldn't see all the holes at once. So I had to either turn my head constantly to find the little holes, or lean back so much that I couldn't actually get my wrist down. Now, they could fix that by making the table smaller, of course, make just scale down the whack-a-mole game. But the whole point is that you have to make those kind of design constraints, because the field of view is just so compromising that every transparent AR system today is simply not good enough. And that's why it isn't a consumer market.
So D1360 saying someday the AR field of view will be so big we'll actually be able to see a whale in a room. You can do that now with a VR headset using augmented reality or mixed reality, depending what term you want to use for it, what branding the marketing gods have given you to use. But I could put a small whale in the room right now, a decent sized whale on this headset right now, and it would all float in front of me. The reason this doesn't work is we don't have great occlusion. The environmental understanding isn't fully fleshed out, so the whale won't perfectly fit. And then, of course, the pass through pixels. The actual view of the environment is going to be so lacking right now. But as we point out in the show, that's going to get better.
Yeah.
That pass-through is going to improve dramatically. So all that point is, the 1360, what you're not getting, what so many people are out there are confused by, is you have that field of view today to do the whale and make you believe it's actually right there. What's holding that back is price, weight of the headset, and I don't know, those are the two big things, right? The price and the weight of the headset. You bring those two things down, and your whale that's this big is going to feel like it's there on better hardware than we have right now. It's going to be cheaper hardware than we have right now, and it's already there. What you're not going to get that is, going from 60 degrees to 70 degrees on these AR optics that cost $3,000 or $5,000 for a single pair, and the field of view is always right there. You're always going to feel like, I'm going to rip this off and I'm going to go back into my VR headset because of that difference.
Yeah, and as you say, it's the weight and the cost, but as it's also, of course, the pass through. The fact that when you're in a Quest 3, when you're in a Vision Pro, you're seeing this a grainy, low resolution view of the real world. And as you say, the occlusion isn't perfect. So on Vision Pro, you don't even get dynamic occlusion. On Quest, the dynamic occlusion is kind of low resolution, so it's not perfectly cut out, and you don't get a dynamic scene mesh. It's only where it was when it was scanned. So a person or pet might be baked into the room, or your furniture might be moved. But all of these are like easily solvable engineering problems. When I say easy, I mean the natural progression of the chipsets that power these headsets, the cameras that go into them, the machine learning advancements that power a lot of this scene understanding, environment understanding. All they have to do is just keep improving at the same rate that they've been improving for the past 10 years, and those problems get solved. Those are concrete, step-by-step, gradual engineering problems. To get AR glasses that can do that experience with that kind of field of view is a fundamental material science problem. So on one end, if you talk about like the technology readiness scale of something being like a fundamental research problem, all the way to just a step-by-step, your iPhone camera gets better every year engineering problem, the mixed reality headsets are over here and the AR glasses are over here. And that's why we are so strong in our convictions when we describe how the future will likely play out in these product categories. Are we ready to talk about the HUD glasses, or would you like to say anything else there?
Well, Mastoris has a good transition for us to get into that subject, saying by the time field of view on glasses is actually good, the quality of pass-through cameras on VR headsets will quite significantly be better than now. That is our expectation. That is the path that we believe to be on. The question is, how do glasses that are completely see-through, you have no display on them at all right now, how do they start adding in those display elements? How do they get smarter and move past where they are today without necessarily moving to that next step? So David, break that down for us.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to our next point. As Ian points out, today we have the current Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which don't have a display of any sort. The only visual feedback you get as the wearer is that there is a small LED on your side that lets you know when you're recording. It's just a little LED up in the corner. It's not even on the lens itself. It's, way up here in the internals. So before we get all the way to full AR glasses that can put virtual objects into your space and, have a Pokemon battle in the park and all of this that we're discussing, there's going to be an intermediary product category, an intermediate step, you could say, except that these products are all going to exist as tiers in a product lineup. And that is HUD glasses, heads-up display glasses, smart glasses with a HUD. That means that we're not talking about a wide field of view experience of bringing objects in. We're talking about a 20 to 30 degree little floating display in front of you that's fixed in space, that gives you your phone notifications, or at least the important ones that you want to come through, output from the Meta AI assistant as text instead of audio. So you might ask a question and you don't want to have, your hearing interrupted while it's being answered. You just want to see that quick answer up on text, or to let you frame the photos that you take on these glasses. So you can see a little thumbnail preview of the framing that you have. There are, of course, other use cases that you can talk about here. If you're on a video call, you could even theoretically have the other person's view as this kind of small 20 or 30 degree field of view output. That is what we believe will be the next step from not only Meta, but also from Samsung and Google when it comes to their glasses, and reportedly Apple as well in a few years from now. So the report here is from the Financial Times, which is a very reliable outlet, and they are claiming that the next generation of Ray-Ban Meta glasses will arrive later this year, late 2025, and have a small HUD like we've been talking about. Now, this is really interesting because it contradicts a report we had earlier in 2024 from The Information. The Information claimed that, yes, Meta would release HUD glasses in 2025, so they agree on that part, but The Information said that they wouldn't be Ray-Ban branded because EssilorLuxottica, the parent company of Ray-Ban that also owns Oakley and half the glasses industry in the world, balked at the thickness and extra weight that would be needed to add this HUD. So you're talking about an extra 20 grams or so. Real non-smart glasses are on the order of 30 grams. The Ray-Ban Meta glasses are on the order of 50 grams. If you want to get up and add a little waveguide projector and such, you would need maybe 70 grams, as well as a little bit more thickness in the stem. But something changed dramatically between this Times report from the Financial Times and that earlier in the summer report from The Information. And that is that Meta and EssilorLuxottica signed an enormous agreement to extend their partnership into the 2030s, which included next generation smart glasses products. And as part of that, Meta took a 5% stake in EssilorLuxottica. So Meta now owns part of EssilorLuxottica. So there is one possibility here, of course, which is that either The Information or the Financial Times are mistaken. The other possibility is that The Information was right at the time of their report back in the early summer, but since then, following that giant partnership and investment, EssilorLuxottica has been persuaded to change their mind. Thus, if that is what is happening here, and that's just us trying to put together the dots of possibility, you would then see later this year a Ray-Ban Meta with HUD, or whatever the hell they call it, Ray-Ban Meta Plus glasses that come out. The one thing I would just point out here is what we don't expect would be for these to replace the audio-only glasses. We expect that they would be a higher-end option, and that's based on numerous interviews with Mark Zuckerberg in which he essentially says that. He says that because of the utility of Meta AI, even in voice form, he expects that there will be audio-only displayless glasses for a very long time. So these start at $300. Maybe the HUD glasses are $500. It's just a number I'm making up and throwing out there. And that's the kind of decision you can make. So you can say as a consumer, do I want the audio-only output glasses that are slimmer and lighter and cheaper? Or do I want to get the HUD as well and be able to have this contextual information pop up and have that useful in the world? It could be navigation as well, right? So we wouldn't be talking about floating blue arrows that point you to where you need to go. That would be full AR glasses out in the future. This year would be, a kind of fixed display showing you a kind of mini
monoscopic
that you might get in a video game.
Monoscopic or stereoscopic, David?
So earlier reporting indicated that this would be monoscopic, but we haven't heard reliable indications either way. I think that would be somewhat disappointing. I've tried at CES, I think it was, might have been Display Week, monoscopic glasses, and I find there's a little bit of eye strain there. We'll have to see what these companies push through, because the one thing I will give to the claims of changing focus is that I do think, given the response to the Orion glasses, that Meta will accelerate the glasses product line in general, want to push harder and faster there. The only thing I disagree with is that comes at the expense of Quest. But for now, we're talking about the glasses here. And I think what we will definitely see is that now that Meta owns a part of this company, now that they've extended that partnership, they're going to push hard at getting these things. Because the background context we need to add here is that these things are selling like hotcakes. We reported on that EssilorLuxottica earnings call I listened to, where they said that this was the top selling product in 60% of EMEA stores. We talked about that on an earlier show. Numerous times Meta executives have claimed that this thing, deeply outsold their expectations. We've seen supply issues constantly through this thing's lifetime, where it appears that for some models at least, they're selling them as fast as they can make them. This does appear to be a hit product.
I like Paul Tuff bringing up the color e-ink display. Yeah, my fantasy is to have a color e-ink display or just even a black and white e-ink display as the external display on a VR headset to let people know what you're doing in VR. You don't need the fast display for that. I would love that. I would love to see someone to try to do that and see what that looks like. Um, the HUD glasses is really interesting. So I actually tried the HUD glasses from Android XR. So they showed me monoscopic HUD in the right corner of my vision. Basically, the exact same product idea that you're talking about here, and I'm ready to be surprised by this. Right, so Meta, a lot of people forget Meta's already on its second generation of these glasses. The first generation Meta glasses were terrible. People hated them. The quality on the camera just wasn't there. It was you take these videos and it'd be a little shaky. There'd be blurriness in their video. It just didn't look right. And then they improved the camera quality dramatically on Gen 2, and suddenly that was the difference to make them sell like hotcakes. I'm not convinced that a HUD, Google Glass 2.0 or 3.0, depending on how you want to think about it, is compelling in any way, shape, or form compared to just that camera. I remember doing an interview for like a radio show back in the day, where they were asking me about Google Glass, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not seeing it. I don't see the HUD being a useful thing. However, if you see someone put a high quality pair of glasses or a high quality camera in your perspective for a low price, that would be an interesting product. And I said that a decade ago, and then we went a whole decade before someone finally put a high quality camera in your perspective and then attached it to the same Bluetooth listening capabilities that you have out of your AirPods, and made a good product out of it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure HUDs drive all that much more usefulness. Like I do want the centered navigation arrow, but I don't know if I want to be closing my left eye to focus myself on a HUD in the corner of my vision.
Yeah, you make some very interesting points there. The one company I want to give credit for actually doing the high quality camera thing before Meta, which everyone seems to have forgotten, is Snap. The Snap spectacles we talk about today are like a $99 a month AR developer product, but since what was it 2017, maybe yeah, around 2017 plus or minus a year, Snap had Snap spectacles, which were pretty much this, but in a kind of goofier form factor, a little bit kind of quirky. Didn't have the audio thing. At least the versions I tried didn't have the audio thing. I think when it comes to this second generation here, these Ray-Ban Meta glasses compared to Stories, sure, it's camera quality, but I feel like it was also the addition of AI. It was the improvement of audio quality that make these things excellent for listening use cases. And it was also a lot the UX. I think the UX really matters because when you came to operating and syncing the original glasses, the app sucked. And then they kind of revamped that with the new one, and it works so well. As I often joke, it syncing media from these things works 10 times better than syncing media from your Quest headset. How that's even possible, given this is the same company, I don't really know. But you go to your Quest headset, you go to your gallery, and you try to pick up a footage or something, and it's a nightmare. And you go to your Meta View app, and it just comes off instantly. I think the difference, we have very different use cases for these glasses. For you, the camera really, really matters. For me, I very, very rarely use the camera, and the product would be pretty much the same without it for me. I use the audio capabilities, whether that be for listening to podcasts, for listening to music, for phone calls. That's the killer use case for me for this. I take every phone call on these glasses because it lets my ears be completely open to the real world, and the microphone quality blows away any AirPods model. It's incredible. So that's what I use this for. And I think to me, the HUD is compelling, but I strongly agree with you that the monoscopic aspect really sucks, right? I would love to be proven wrong here, but I would really like to see this same exact concept, but binocular, right? Where you have both eyes getting a view rather than one. I wonder what
Mm-hmm.
the point of that is. I wonder if this is just a cost thing, a weight thing. It's entirely possible to do both, right?
Ooh.
I tried prototypes. I can't remember which trade show it was, but I literally had one beside the other. It was, the mono and the binocular prototype of the exact same display system, and it must just be a cost and weight
Yeah,
thing.
So if anyone from Android XR is watching, I gave a bad impression when I demoed your hardware, like met you for all of 20 minutes. I apologize for that. Like you get marched into a room and you got to try out these things. You got to collect your thoughts really quickly. You want to focus it on the hardware right in front of you. I've got a room full of like 10 people around me, all from Google, looking to see my reaction to their hardware, and they walked me into a room with all these optics, very similar to what Dave is describing, and I tried binocular with it centered directly in the middle of my vision, and I had a Google Maps arrow basically, and I could turn my head, and the arrow would turn with me to show me exactly where I needed to walk. That was killer. That needs to be in a product immediately. It needs to be like I want those
So you do
glasses.
want the HUD then?
No, I want the binocular. I want
Well, a HUD
binocular
can be binocular, right? It's
as long as it's in the center of my vision and it
yeah.
goes away completely, I'm cool with it. If it's binocular, center of my vision, goes away when I don't need it, nailed it. Yes, that's going to be a killer major upgrade for these things. Monocular in the corner of your vision, no, I'm not sold. And I expressed that to these people at Google in this 5 minutes I had to test this stuff. It's like, okay, let's try the binocular ones. Whoa, this is awesome. I want these immediately. I want to take them outside and have mapping right now. Do this with Google Maps. Like this will make my life better right now with binocular map arrow right in the middle of my vision, nothing else, good to go. Give me a monocular heads up display, just like Google Glass back in the day. I was like, I don't like that. Get this off my head. And I told Google that, and I felt bad because it's like, I want to give them feedback on how this stuff works. And that's what it felt like to me.
This is fascinating. I like because I feel the exact same way. Again, I've done the same demo. It was a different company. It was one of the companies that provides the components to make this happen. I felt the exact same way. And so you see Google come at this with, you know, a monocular option. Meta reportedly is going to have this reportedly at least be monocular. I'm wondering like what are they thinking? It
So
sucks to
I
have it
have
only in one eye. Of course it does.
Yes, yes, yes. And so my idea here, my theory here, we'll see if this plays out over this year. If you go with monocular, maybe you get your A/B test out of pricing. Maybe Meta gets its A/B test that they always do, where they price the Ray-Bans at the same price as the new monocular heads-up display glasses, and they see which one sells better as an A/B test right up front. You get the lower price with just adding this little itty bitty display.
The A/B test I want to see is monocular and binocular, right? I want to see a higher end one there, but I have a, I really hope Meta doesn't do the Quest Pro thing where they half spec something and then think that the whole concept was wrong, right? I hope they don't put a monocular HUD on this thing and then it, you know, people don't like it and it doesn't sell well and they go, oh, I guess HUDs are pointless rather than no, that's not the lesson. The lesson is that it needs to be higher end. That you, again, we're a bit salty about Quest Pro here, where there is this kind of sentiment that Meta learned the lesson that, oh, well, I guess high end headsets are a bad idea when it was no, you underspec this thing on every possible spec and then called it high end. And let's not get into that rant though.
well, well, it's funny to think about this on it's really cool to hear David echoing my sentiment on just my 5 minute reaction to these glasses. And it's like you can imagine the product makers at Google and the product makers at Meta doing the same thing all day long. You know, you've seen these photos of Zuckerberg at his desk grabbing this pair of glasses, and like you can imagine him doing these A/B tests for himself to figure out what do we actually ship. Well, like Google, I would like you to ship the binocular map glasses with the heads up display right in the middle of your vision. Give me the arrow showing me where you're going. Give me live translation on that display. Yeah, go there. Don't do Google Glass 3.0 monocular. Abandon that idea. Move on from it and differentiate yourself around that idea. And then do Android XR for VR headsets really, really, really well. And you've got something to push back against Meta in 2025 with. But if we just get two sets of monocular heads-up displays
Oh, that'll be disappointing.
I would, yeah, just stick with this, right? Like I don't, yeah.
It's really puzzling. I really, this is one of the things where usually I kind of understand where these companies are coming from and we can kind of construct a narrative of what they might be thinking. I guess like cost and battery life, but it feels like an Oculus Go thing all over again where, you know, it was missing something essential, sixed off, right? And Meta acknowledged afterwards, they came out with that statement to us, I think it was to us, where they said, we're not going to make a 3DOF headset ever again. I wonder, are we a few years away from, we're not going to make a monocular glasses ever again?
Yeah, I know, right? Like that would be, it would be bad. It would be, remember this, right? This is the 1st of January or, 3rd or 2nd of January. This is the beginning of 2025. You heard it here first. If this actually pans out, where what we find, what we find impressive and versus what the market actually finds impressive, and we'll compare over time. Is 6DOF as important for MR in the same way for VR? I'm not sure, honestly. Really, really interesting comment there from Biggs, because you can have a head tracked, like you can have a floating display follow you in MR really effectively, and you've got a whole nother different class of glasses products. You've got the ones from X-Rail that
Yeah.
kind of fix that product category where you don't necessarily need 6DOF to have a big floating virtual screen follow you, but that lacks the killer thing that I love in Apple Vision Pro and Quest 3, which is, a triple or an ultra wide display, right? I can have all three of my virtual displays all in front of me, all rendered at their highest resolution possible. And I can get all of that inside of my VR headset, where you can have just really one display inside of the current crop of glasses.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I really like 6DOF or even the virtual display in mixed reality use case where it stays fixed in space. I like that, but you're right to say, Biggs, it's not as essential as you say in X-Rail with the 3DOF version of X-Rail 1. It's usable. It's certainly usable, and it's not like deeply compromising. I think the 0DOF sucked when it didn't have the 3DOF at all by default, but with that X-Rail 1, they kind of have passed like a minimum. It's not as important as when your entire virtual environment is in 3DOF. But I mean, the last thing I want to say on this is it's interesting to, again, put this in context of, people are dreaming and hoping and delusional about the idea that we're going to see Orion style AR glasses appear in a few months or something like that. And in reality, we're talking about putting a tiny little monocular HUD into these glasses. Like, this is where we are in 2025. This is where we are. We're not at the 70-degree field of view AR glasses.
Well, let's go back to some of the product design. Maybe we could learn from this, or what I want to see in VR. You can imagine a big screen beyond fitting into a device, into a case like this. The problem is everything else the big screen beyond needs, right? The current big screen beyond needs laser tracking base stations. It needs a giant PC down on the ground. It has a giant wire running to that thing. But what I want to imagine is, right, the headset going into this case, and then a cord coming out the other end down to another battery pack or to the wall power, right? So you can imagine USB-C going into here, going out to bring in a lot of power in through this thing. You pulling your VR headset out of this case, you putting your VR glasses on your head, enjoying VR with a 3-foot cord going between the case, the battery case, and your headset, and then the rest of it going down to your thing. I would like to see that idea done more, and I'd like to see it at lower prices than we have out of the Apple Vision Pro. And then I would like to see the VR market we get out of that.
Yeah, I tend to very, very much agree with you on this. I think that either a dock or a case is becoming kind of essential for headsets and glasses. I think this product would not have been anywhere near as successful if it didn't have this battery case, just like AirPods, right? Imagine instead of getting AirPods in a case, you got each individual AirPod and the case was an optional extra. Of course, it would have sold much, much worse. And I have the opinion that I think every headset should come with a dock, right? Every home headset and every glasses should come with a case. And it's something we've seen companies sort of do. Yeah, X-Rail comes with a case, but it's not a charging case. It would be fascinating to see a new era of lightweight headsets that also do at least optionally have that available. And that kind of brings us on to our next topic quite well, unless you have something you want to add on this last one.
No, we're at the 2-hour mark, and is this our last subject for today? I think that we're going to get into.
This topic will be.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to our members and our patrons for supporting us. Please do become a member and support the work of our journalism team that we do. Here at UploadVR, we've got a small team. We do a lot. We're all a little bit re-energized, I think. We did get some time off here, even though we were watching all those quests breaking, and we were, of course, enjoying VR in our free time and trying to explain to our families why why we believe this future, and we aren't doing something else with our lives over the Christmas break. Please come and support our work. I think this commentary, this in-depth breakdown of the VR market is something we do uniquely at UploadVR, and we do it with the support of our patrons and members, helping us ignore the clickbait, ignore what the short-term trends are telling us via SEO to go follow. Your support lets us follow that, follow our hearts and follow our minds wherever it takes us. So please support us into the future. David, our last subject.
Yeah, just before the last subject, I want to kind of continue on what you said about the Christmas break and families. A few of the friends that I know actually at this Christmas upgraded from Quest 2 to Quest 3, and I've been really fascinated to see their viewpoint there. And their impressions of that upgrade have been really, really positive, and that's great to see. I really have said this before. I said this when I reviewed Quest 3 last year, but we don't say it enough. I strongly think that shift from Quest 2 to Quest 3, when you get the sharp and clear pancake lenses, the color pass through, the lighter moment of inertia because it's slimmer, all of these little improvements, the higher fidelity graphical performance, and we do not talk about this enough, the controllers, then you do actually pass this threshold where this starts to become something where, the feedback I'm hearing from these friends is, I want to use this a lot more than I ever wanted to use that Quest 2. This is really good, and Quest 2 was just okay. And that's really great to see, and I think it shows we're on the right path. Just want to linger on that controllers point, because these people that I've been speaking to have been just as, if not more, enthusiastic about the controllers than the headset, because what they often found was that when they were in a game that required two-handed interactions, such as a shooter game where they're physically reloading their weapon, that they would bash that. Oh, my headset has crashed. You're muted.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, I was there speaking to the ether as a muted person. I tried to make sure. Yeah, can't hear Ian because I was muted. Darn it, I was there.
Yeah, just to continue, their feedback was that when they were using the Quest 2, they would find so often in these two-handed interactions that their rings would smash into either their wrist, the other controller, their body, their headset at close range, and that getting rid of those rings, and this is something that happened on Pico 4 Ultra as well, has been deeply, deeply significant, and I think we just don't talk about that enough of how much of an upgrade that was for precise two-handed interactions.
Yep, I love that. I did encounter sort of the same thing, or I saw it in a little bit different way. I think I saw it on a Quest 3 that had the ringless controllers, but what I had done was I had insisted that, like, I've moved on from caring about whether my headsets are charged before I put them on. What I've opted for is a whole bunch of wearable slings, water slings, and you just stick a really long battery, high output battery into the water sling, run a USB cord from the battery to your headset, and you're good to go for as long as you possibly want, and without having to worry about getting your headset charged before you put it on. But what I did over the Christmas break was I had my my kid go into Figment XR with this sling around their neck, and they had the controllers in their hand, and they're doing stuff in Figment, and then they hit the controller against the battery that's hanging right against their shoulder, and you realize, oh, that's why that they didn't ship this before. That's why, you don't want to be playing Beat Saber and then your hand come down and smack this battery that's hanging from your chest, and you're now bleeding because you hit a battery with your in your own chest with a fast moving controller. Well, I don't know, it would be nice if you get the sling off to the side. You remind yourself, I don't know, like it's a tricky situation.
Or if the battery is on your head out of the front to the back, right? Again, this comes back to that thing. I think for a very, very long time, there are going to be options on the market, and probably the biggest market for headsets that don't have an external battery. You do see a lot of the industry going for it, but I think there's something so magical from a friction perspective about just picking up a Quest 3 and putting on your head, and not looping around cables of any sort, and finding a way to. There's no slings, there's no BS. You just put it on your head and you go.
All right, so Arlen has me imagining an entire quick draw scenario of the Old West. Okay, so imagine you're in an Old West recreation of the 1800s, and you've come up to the middle of town. It's high noon, and you've got a belt on with holsters for your controllers on your side, right? And now it's time to do a quick draw competition against another person where you each reach for the holster at your side, pull up the controller, and try to shoot the other person away. So Arlen has painted a picture in our comments of that kind of a situation where you've got the controllers clipped to your sides and you're able to whip them out for a game. All right, I'm there. I'm ready. Arlen, make it happen. Let's do it. Let's start a company.
Just want to read out, I'm not sure if you already did, perhaps you're muted, a comment from fmeister94 that has donated €5, it appears to be, and saying keep up the great work. Thanks so much for that donation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm ready for the quick draw, Arlen. You get me going with your ideas. I love your comments. I love all of our creative comments. We have a very good mix in our comments of. I think David has a very engineering mindset, software engineer mindset, where he's like, whenever like the thing that he pointed out, he built the studio for us, right? And whenever anyone on staff is like, it would be great if. David always like cuts them off right at the if and says, "You understand that's dozens of hours of my time, right?" And like he always approaches these things or anything we talk about, any ideas that we have from that mindset of just like, is it really worth the expenditure of engineering power to do this sort of thing? And then we've got a bunch of dreamers in our audience that are a little bit more like me that are like, all right, let's make the engineers do it, right, David? Like, we need it too much, right? And you're just no.
You need to have both, right? You need the right balance of both.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully you can appreciate and understand where David and I are coming from a little bit. I think that's a good description of it. All right. We got one last subject here to get into.
Yep. Speaking of compact headsets, Pimax Dream Air. So we will start this section with our usual caveat when we discuss Pimax, which is that this is a company known for announcing new headsets before they've shipped what they've already announced and taken pre-orders for in the past, for failing to meet their deadlines, sometimes on the scale of years, and of sometimes shipping their headsets without promised features. Crystal, for example, shipped with its eye tracking inoperable for months. That said, they do deliver sometimes headsets that people who are PC VR gamers find deeply valuable. I know multiple PC VR gamers who love their Pimax Crystal or Crystal Lite that they use for sim racing or flight sim setup. And they like how this company doesn't take the meta approach of we want to grow the market big and we don't care about this feature or idea if it's too small and niche. That Pimax does offer a focus on the feature that PC VR enthusiasts care about, and why they may not always deliver. I'm just bringing both sides of this argument. These people would argue that when they do deliver, that they speak to them. And so, again, I want to contrast that with the fact that this company misses its deadlines, announces new things before they ship new things, releases buggy products, has sometimes support issues. All of that said, there are still people who kind of enjoy the Pimax focus, and it does have a place in the market. So I'm trying to be balanced here. I'm trying to present both sides. That's the kind of Pimax background over. Now let's talk about Dream Air, this headset that they have just announced and taken pre-orders for. So this is a ultra compact headset, as you can very clearly see here, that they claim weighs less than 200 grams. So in comparison, the big screen Beyond that Ian was referring to many times in the show, an excellent headset in itself, is 127 grams. So you see that this thing is less than double the weight while having significantly higher resolution. This is set to use 4K micro OLED panels, one for each eye, integrated eye tracking, 4 cameras that allow for inside-out head tracking and tracking of these touch-like controllers, and a really unique feature that we haven't seen on any headset that I'm aware of, which is a self-tightening head strap. So in the same way that the Nike, whatever you want to say, shoes are available with a self-tightening strap. I don't know if you've seen that. If you have, you'll know what I'm referring to. They take the same exact concept of having a button you press. So when you combine the automatic IPD adjustment enabled by the eye tracking and the self-tightening, the idea is you put this thing on your head, you press a button, and everything just automatically adjusts. The one context I really need to give here, in case you weren't aware, is that this is a tethered PC VR headset. We are not talking about a Quest 3 or Apple Vision Pro style product. We're talking about a big screen beyond style product. So very interestingly, this appears to use the same BOE micro OLED displays that are also being used in Dream MR, Immersed Visor, and Shiftall's Megane X Superlight 8K. So these are 3840 by 3552 panels that seem to be set to usher in a new era of compact 4K per eye headsets, albeit at a steep price. So Ian has talked earlier in this show about how Apple was the first to bring to market ultra high resolution micro OLED on a headset, and it's incredible. And when you try it, it's really tough to go back to low resolution LCD. Really, really tough. Now with BOE, this Chinese display company, all of these smaller companies are going to bring in their own version of this. So pricing wise, again, this is a PC headset. You don't need base stations or controllers. That is included, but you do need a gaming PC. This is available to pre-order for around $1,900. Pimax also has a really weird system where you could also pay $1,200 to try it out for up to 14 days, after which you pay $33 a month for 2 years, which totals around $2,000. They're taking a lot of flack for that. I think they probably should have just gotten rid of that idea. It's a little bit strange. But the last thing I want to say about this is that, very interestingly, you were talking about this idea of having like a compute puck earlier. They say they're also working on a compute puck for this thing, that we have a Snapdragon chipset and a battery so that you could take this on a plane or a train. And presumably this would be, simple use cases, movie watching, things like that, not the kind of use cases that you would do on PC VR. The caveat I want to give on that is that 3 or 4 years ago, they announced that Pimax VR Station, which was going to be a PC VR console of the type we sometimes talk about Valve maybe doing at some point, and that just hasn't materialized at all. So I almost didn't include it in our article here because this just seems like one of those things Pimax says, but we'll see if they follow it up. But the reality is, this is a PC VR headset with eye tracking, ultra high resolution displays, and a small form factor that they claim will start shipping in May. But take that with an enormous grain of salt.
Yeah, I'm personally, my recommendations are past the phase of even considering sort of also ran companies. I don't think I can recommend a company like Pimax, even for those slim margin people who are like in the market for something that's, I don't know, PC powered, wide field of view, whatever. I've seen too many bad experiences from people who have bought these headsets, and I think the market is too small for these smaller companies to support themselves in the face of multiple headsets potentially coming from Apple, from Google-backed companies with Android XR, and then Meta-backed Horizon OS, even Pico, right? There's and Sony. I just went through 5 manufacturers or efforts in VR that I would recommend in front of a Pimax.
It's interesting, you say that. I want to push back in one sense, and yet you do often recommend the big screen beyond. This looks to me to be a slightly heavier big screen beyond with built-in tracking, included controllers, and significantly higher resolution and eye tracking for about double the price. Isn't it the same market? Isn't this just the same market for big screen beyond, but higher end?
Without the history of misleading users, right?
Sure,
Big Screen has a very good track record of being upfront and direct with their audience, and noting realistic timelines for, like, next few months we're going to deliver, and then they deliver. We'll catch up in the next few months, and they catch up in the next few months. That's Big Screen has built a rapport there with its audience that Pimax does not have. So I can't. They're in different categories for that reason.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is a difficult discussion because we have to separate the product from the company, and maybe we don't have to separate the product from the company. That's the question. Do we separate the product from the company? That's what makes this such a different discussion. We have our UploadVR's Don Hopper in the comments as a VR gamer dude saying that he loves his Pimax Crystal, but it took them a while to get it where it needed to be. And that's a sentiment I've heard from a lot of these Pimax customers that, they like where it is today, but when they got it, it wasn't right, and they got it late. And that's what I feel like you might get with the Dream Air. I feel like, there's a very high chance that this thing comes out, and again, I'm just speculating, the eye tracking doesn't work at launch, and they say, we'll fix that in a firmware update down the line. And, maybe there's other issues with it. We'll have to see. I really want to try this thing because I like the design. I mean, it does seem interesting. I'm curious to see whether without a top strap, this can support the weight. Apple surely tried it with Vision Pro, but Vision Pro is 600 grams and this thing is 200 grams. Of course, again, completely different product. Vision Pro is a spatial computer. This is an accessory to your gaming PC. If you are someone, though, who, you are a sim racer, you are a flight sim person, you have had a Pimax product in the past and you do have some trust with them, but your concern is about form factor and weight, this could be interesting to see. I mean, what we are seeing here from this company and from Shiftall as well is this emergence on the positive side here of an era of compact, ultra high resolution headsets. Right? They're solving the things we're talking about. They're solving weight. They're solving form factor. They're solving resolution. And with eye tracking here and the supported titles, you'll be able to get some foveated rendering, hopefully. But of course, again, the caveat is this is still leveraging a gaming PC, but there are millions, single digit millions, but there are millions of Steam VR users, right? And they most of them don't have the financial desire to spend $2,000 on a headset, but some of them do. And you're right to say it's a very, very small market, but it's a fierce market, right? You have so many companies that are going after this same space. You have Big Screen, you have Shiftall, you have Pimax, you have Somnium. They all want to be your $2,000 PC VR headset. We'll have to see what the reviews are like for this thing when it comes out.
So there is CES next week. We'll have Don Hopper heading to that event to get some hands-on experience. Don, I will put you to task to hold off on your thoughts for as long as possible, and really assess the deliverability of the things that you see at CES. So I want to make sure that you focus what you see at CES towards that. And then when we get you into the studio and in front of our audience, we'll have a really nuanced discussion with our audience about just how prepared for delivery the things you saw were. Because when you go to CES, you see a lot of things that are just being thrown out there to test that market viability, to see if there's truly a market for these ideas down range. And I think we're past some of that here at UploadVR. Like we know what we want, and I've talked with enough people in our audience, right? Don, if you see a keyboard PC, if you see an entire PC built into a keyboard, you let us know and you take note of that. That's what I see in our audience, people wanting. People who have been living with the Apple Vision Pro for a year are like, now I need a Mac that's displayless and can go with my Apple Vision Pro as a companion for it. There are people who are, I think even in our audience, people who are taking Mac Minis with them everywhere they go, specifically for that purpose. Well, we need computers that are purpose-built now for VR headsets. We're over that threshold of ready and waiting for that thing. We need bags that are ready and built for VR headsets. We need slimmer VR headsets that will fit into bags and have charging connected to them.
Dare
It's
I
a
say?
different, yeah. Sorry, what was that?
No, I was just dare I say that you say slimmer VR headsets? It's right there, right?
I'm not I'm not going to take your bait. I'm not going to take the Pimax bait. All right, David. I'm not going to let you trick me. Like David, you're doing the devil's advocate for me here. All right. Well, when we try the Pimax on our heads, and it actually delivers on its promises, and we actually get responses to our emails that aren't like 36 hours later and clearly, carefully worded. That we'll see all that stuff. In the meantime, I'm looking for accessories to keep me in VR for longer, more comfortable, to enhance the MetaQuest experience, to enhance the Apple Vision Pro experience. all the Android ideas that could be down the line. It is a big, big, big year for VR. And I think, our audience, you uniquely understand the challenges of this market, the fact that the big companies can mislead at every turn when it comes to the capabilities of these devices, how they work with others. You're going to help inform a lot of people this year of what these headsets actually do, what they actually don't do. And you heard it here first. Keep an eye out for those keyboard PCs, the bags that charge up your headset when they're not in use, the cases, the slimming of VR headsets. Watch for it. It's coming this year, and it's going to be a big year for VR.
I think we could definitely see some company tackle your Quest 3 charging case idea, right? With those gold pins on the bottom, it just makes so much sense. We see third-party charging docks now. There is a good ecosystem of third-party charging docks. Why has no one done the case yet? Well, I'm wrong. I actually saw one and I linked it to you, but it was very like bulky and awkward and had bad reviews. It seems like one of these companies could do it, right? Like be it, like Anchor or Bobo or someone like that could surely take it on at some point. There's
Yep.
one. Sorry, I'll let you
Little,
respond there.
sorry, just little Scampy saying, isn't that the Raspberry Pi keyboard you want? Yep. I've got the Raspberry Pi keyboard set up right here. It's my air-gapped PC, basically. It exists anytime I want it outside of the internet. A little Linux in a keyboard machine with a little USB thumb drive of files hooked into it. If I want to write writing that no one else in the world will see until I connect that thing to a network, that's the keyboard PC it goes into. Well, there should be a Mac version of that. There should be a Windows version of that. And heck, even an Android version of that screenless keyboard PC, right? Like that's where we are. And when you add that to your VR setup, it's gonna you're gonna start seeing the people on the buses and the trains, and you'll start seeing VR headsets used in more situations. But yeah, we're here.
Yeah, so I want to read out a comment from RM. So I made a point there when I was discussing the Pimax Dream Air of saying, it's not a spatial computer like Vision Pro. And RM has rightly pushed back and said the headset plus the computer makes it also a spatial computer and one more capable than a Vision Pro, incomparably so. That's a very, very interesting point. I guess what I should have said there was it's not a standalone spatial computer. You can't just take the Dream Air in a bag and go on a train and take it out. You need to also take out, a powerful gaming laptop at minimum or a desktop ideally. But you're right to say that what we're seeing with these BOE micro OLED panels that I'm discussing almost is more important than the Pimax product that's using them, because there are other companies using it too. What we're seeing there is now the emergence of PC headsets that are also high resolution enough to do this virtual screens use case. I said in my Vision Pro review, it's the first headset with the resolution sufficient to make virtual screens actually good. And what happens when we get that on PC as well, right? What happens? You can, of course, connect your Vision Pro to your PC, but you're carrying around a lot of extra weight and compute for pretty much nothing then, right? If you have a headset like Dream Air, like Shift All's Mechanic, Superlight, you do start to see a possibility of indeed using, the Steam VR windowing system as a spatial computing system. Maybe Valve will lean into that more. And of course, there are also, there's an OpenXR Linux runtime hosted by the open source community that focuses on that. Super interesting to see what happens when we now have headsets with the resolution sufficient to replace physical screens.
Gamers Generation here saying, in my opinion, I think it'd make more sense for a phone to be the wireless compute for a headset or something like that. What was that, David?
I just said, don't trigger me. Well, my rant on this.
Yeah, I read it out to trigger David, and he's right there with you.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, well, when your headset drains the power from your phone, it becomes a conflict, right? You don't want to get out of your headset and find your phone at 20% battery. We've seen that play out in the past, and it did not work well. However, I will say I pack a trunk onto my my phones pretty regularly nowadays, and the moment I do that, I take away my battery concerns, and then I would love to see the phone displaying everything back to my headset.
Sure. So the phone displaying apps on the headset because those apps aren't available on the headset, sure, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with that in any way. But the general idea, and I've ranted about this before. That's why we're kind of joking here, of the phone being like a way to offload compute from the headset. The reason that it doesn't work and the reason I'm jokingly getting riled up about that is cooling. And I'll go on my mini cooling rant. I'll try to make it as quick as possible here. What the most important spec of a standalone headset is the cooling fan. And what you see here on both of these headsets, this little line and this little line, that is not a artifact of manufacturing. That is not something that they did to make it cheaper and easier to build. These are very intentional and one of the most important aspects of the design because that is where the heat comes out. So what these headsets do is, yes, they have the same kind of chip as your phone, but they're running it a lot. They're running it a lot faster for sustained periods because they're blasting the hot air that chip generates out of these vents while pulling in cool air to cool it down. And that's something that your phone doesn't do. And that's why phones are not designed, they're simply not designed to have sustained performance over long periods. They're designed for quick bursts of performance. And that's why the real issue with the Samsung Gear VR wasn't just that it drained your phone's battery, even though that sucked. The real issue was you would get 15 minutes into a graphically intense experience, and it would just shut down. It would say, your device is too hot, please take your phone out, because it doesn't have that fan. It's trying to jam all of those components into 7 millimeters, and that's just not conducive to XR's needs.
So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to just make a pitch in 2025 to let us know. Email tips@uploadvr.com or ian@uploadvr.com, ian@uploadvr.com. If you have any tips, tricks, accessories, anything that you have discovered that keeps you in your headset for longer, that's what I want to hear from in 2025. And I want the people in our audience to throw away the guilt over using their VR headsets instead of other devices. I doubt there's much guilt out there to begin with, but I want to change the conversation around to this place of actually VR has saved me time and money because I was able to use it in this way at this time, right? I want to hear those stories this year in 2025. Email Upload VR with those stories. You know, illustrate your journey. Show us photos of your setups and what you were able to do with VR. Show us VR being used in unexpected places. Right, you're sitting in a nice hotel room, looking out your window, but you've got your 5 windows over here to the left. I would love to see those examples. I'd love to show them on this TV over through the course of this year, because I'm tired of this defensiveness of the technology. We are past that. This is no longer we need to defend the technology's existence. This is, let's actually share the tips and tricks that are making this useful in my life, right? And let's change this conversation around on our audience a little bit to being like, I actually could have bought a $1,000 ultra wide, but instead I got the Mac Mini and an Apple Vision Pro, or I got the Quest 3 and using a Windows 11 PC with the triple display setup. So my actual cost out the door was $800 versus $2,000 versus the other way of doing it. I want to hear those stories here this year in 2025. And I want to hear those real numbers, those real world decisions, the real world moments that were made possible because you had a VR headset and nobody else did. And let's change that around in 2025. You want to hear those stories too, David?
Absolutely, complete in agreement. I think, we're at the stage where this is a real market. It's growing. We've seen it's Questmas again, as we pointed out at the start of the show. The Quest 3S is outselling all of the other similar category of devices on Amazon. We're in this era. It's, on the low end, people are getting in. The high end is being born. We're just discussing the high end being born. As Ian said earlier in the show, the high end's going to get cheaper and the low end's going to get better. And they're going to meet at the middle and deliver some really, really incredible headsets. And we'll see developers continue to leverage those to develop incredible content. We could not be more optimistic for where the general industry is going through 2025. And we can't wait to report on everything that's happening this year.
Yep. So stay tuned when Don Hopper and I get back into the studio. I'll try to get him back in here as soon as possible. And then we'll have CS coverage next week. Then we've got a big, big, big year. We cannot predict all the things that are going to come right now, the 1st of January, but we have every indication that it is going to be a breakthrough year for VR in general. We thank you all for being on this journey with us. Marcellus, Arland, Davin, Robert Quinones, James O'Laughlin, VR Gamer Dude. Gosh, we have a lot of regular viewers in our comments today. It feels amazing to get started in 2025 with you. You're the people that are going to introduce VR to tens of thousands of people out there this year. We thank you for trusting us with your news. Come back, and if you can afford to help us out as a member or a patron, please do so as we grow this into the future. We've got blue sky ahead of us when it comes to the VR market. It's going to be big. Thank you for being with us so far. Thank you to David for breaking this down. We hope you're rested, and we hope they don't kill you this year with all the updates.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you again next week for another live show, hopefully.